What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? My name is Terry McBride, and I was more upset with myself than I should have been last night for leaving the Han Solo movie out of my Star Wars rankings. So much to the point where I ended up watching the movie last night from like 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. or somewhere around there, 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. maybe. Late night, early morning, huge slate, lot to go through, massive 14 gamer to talk about. This is the rotoscouts MLB DFS Lineup Card. If you're here for anything else, you're in the wrong spot, but hang out with us anyway. Maybe you'll learn something. We're here to talk about game by game, go through the entire 14 gamer for this slate. There is a ton of pitching available on the board. Looks like we got a good crew already in the chat hanging out with us. Lots to talk about today, gang. No time to dilly-dally, but we will anyway, like we usually do. Don't know where the over-under set, probably somewhere after lock if we were being honest about things, but we're going to try and make some good time today because I do want to get some lineups built because this is a really interesting one that I think is going to demand trying to spread out to like a ton of different options unless you just really want to plant a flag on something and just occupy full positions, which could be a way to go on this one. Let's say hi to everybody. Joker just popped up to say hello. Hello, buddy. Good boy. Yes. Yeah, you're the co-host. I know. Everybody knows. Go lie down. Now, we can say hi to everybody who's in the chat. PoDGen Stoner says 365 on the road to 420 before NFL opening day. We got about a week and change to do it. We'll probably pick up some people when we start doing some NFL content next week. If you haven't noticed, the NFL channel is open for business in the Discord. Everything in Discord right now is Discord's free. Everything on the site right now is free. There's nothing NFL-wise on the site just yet, but keep your eyes open. We will see where things go from there. I gotta calm this dog down behind me. Calvin Dunn's in the chat. Trey McKelly's in the chat. Lars here. Matt Tomlinson. Lone Wolf's here. Phil Still. EB says, yeah. What's up, Phil? Or EB. What's up, Phil, too? Everybody. Phil says, Joker. Dimitri's here. Mitch got a good one last night again. Another solid little W for him. Said he wasn't even going to play the slate and looked like he ended up entering 40-something lineups and coming out with a tidy little profit. So another congrats to Dimitri. Nice job. Show Country. What's going on, Show Country? Welcome, welcome. 29 people hanging out after just a couple minutes. A lot of people still trickling in middle of the afternoon here. I get it. But we got to kind of dive in and get started. We got 14 games to talk about, so this is going to take a minute. So let me just open up the overall board here, and let's just get right into things. And really, the starting point, resorting this because I gave Jody Peters his innings back. So the starting point has to be this ridiculous pitching slate that we've got. There are options galore, options up and down, options in basically every price tier, premium guys, high strikeout guys in great matchups, scuffling versions of formerly high-end aces against potentially good targets, the same thing at really good prices against really bad targets when it comes to a guy like Carlos Rodon. But it's really deep. I mean, the cut line is honestly down here somewhere, but maybe a couple of these guys probably fall below it if we're calling them out. But like Max Fried and Julio Urias, they're in terrible matchups. They're both limited by their opponents, but either one of those guys could have a successful day. It's more likely Max Fried, but those guys are limited by projection, but not necessarily by opportunity, not necessarily in terms of ceiling. A lot of these guys down here are kind of wasted spots. These are your targets basically for bats, is a lot of these guys down here. But everybody, including like Dakota Hudson, including from a value perspective, a value dart perspective, Touki Toussaint with a little bit of potential against Detroit, although we're showing a ton of upside against Detroit the other way. So really just breaking it down in terms of where do I really like the opportunities. Both of these guys at the top, if we're just talking about the top end aces, guys with major opportunities, they're correctly priced as the top two priced options on the slate. But Tyler Glasnow, major opportunity against Cleveland. They're a limited strikeout group, but there's more strikeouts in that lineup than there used to be. And they're not a great run creation group, and he's a fantastic strikeout pitcher who finds him himself. Max Scherzer is Max Scherzer. He's still got, for all the bumps he's taken this year, still got a 28-something% strikeout rate that we'll get into in a minute. Still pitching largely like Max Scherzer in more outings than he doesn't. And he's got a very, very good strikeout matchup against the Twins. I do think there's a little potential for the Twins' power. They're very cheap on both sites again, so they're kind of a value power stack. But Scherzer's in a great spot. So if I'm just calling favorites, like it's just easy to say, hey, take those two guys. If you're building one lineup, put one of those two guys in it. Or both of the, well, you can't fit both of those guys on DraftKings, but one of those two guys if you're just building one lineup. If you go down the board, I would probably not use Eury Perez if I was building like one lineup, three lineups like that. I don't fully trust where the pitch count's going to be. He had a 6-inning start against this same Nationals team the last time he went. He struck out 7. He had a really good game, but he only threw 76 pitches. And they're really trying to limit his exposure this year. So I think the ceiling is probably 80, 85 pitches, somewhere around there. But he can clearly get this kind of a score in that pitch count. So I had him limited earlier in the day. I cut his innings, and I gave him the additional inning back. And he bounces back up to this level in the projections. And I don't really want to stop it from happening. But I don't necessarily think that he's the right guy to say, hey, go to at basically full price, 9,600, 8,800. Little cheap maybe on DK, basically full price on FanDuel. Maybe not the best option in terms of there's doubt about how deep we get him in this game. There's doubt about, especially on FanDuel, the quality start. Michael Wacha, really projecting interesting. Particularly, there's a few guys like this across the entire slate who are somewhat expensive options, kind of mid-range on FanDuel, and very good value options on DK. We get one of them in Wacha, the righty. He projects up at the top of the board here with these guys against a high strikeout Giants group that has given similar pitchers some pretty strong results lately. Only 8,300, 94 on FanDuel. I think he's playable on both sites. Patrick Sandoval against the Oakland Athletics, who lose some of their recent quality, some of that, those stout contact profiles we've been looking at. When they face a lefty, they lose some of that. And Patrick Sandoval is typically really good at limiting power. So him against this Oakland team for only 7,200 on the DK slate is a dynamite value option. You don't have to go fishing too deep in the pool to go to like good SP2 value plays on the DK board today, which is kind of interesting. I would throw Perez into that mix at 8,800. He's not a value guy necessarily, but he's just barely probably clinging to that SP2 level as far as price goes. Gilbert's in SP1. Definitely projects like it, 9,800, 9,300, perfectly fairly priced up against the Mets, that top-heavy, limited basically three-man with a couple of interesting lefty power bats from time to time type guys. Carlos Rodon, I have no idea what to make of this. I couldn't limit it because he had an okay, he almost got to an okay outing the last time. He went 6th the time before that. So the innings will probably be there, but it's a really tough opponent. I don't really buy this one, but I wanted to leave it where it was because the model's hit on a lot of these where it's just been able to suss things out that I can't necessarily sniff out. There's nothing good about that matchup. The Astros are third best in baseball for run creation against lefties. The Astros have the second or best lowest strikeout rate against lefties. They have a 200 plus ISO as a unit against lefties. Their two big lefties are premium options against fellow lefties. So I don't buy that one. I'm not going to really use it. But I wanted to leave it where it was for our purposes to talk about it on the show. Zach Wheeler, tremendous option, 10-6, full price. He projects a few points behind the leaders, but this is not that much daylight between there and there. And he's obviously a premium guy who does not get dinged for much runs, does not get dinged for much power, has a good matchup with a fair amount of strikeouts in it against Milwaukee. Kodai Senga, an interesting option against a low walk, high strikeout Seattle team. If he can avoid the power, if he can avoid putting too many guys on via the free passes, which he's been limiting a little bit more effectively lately, I think there's plenty of upside for him to find a big strikeout game. Joe Ryan in a bad matchup against Texas. James Paxton in a great matchup against Kansas City for only 88.75. He's another guy, high-end guy with a very high ceiling for only 75. Yeah, he scuffled his strikeout rate for August was only 17%, but he's only 7,500 going up against the limited high strikeout Royal. That's a great spot. Justin Verlander against the scuffling Yankees. Bumpy version of Justin Verlander, but still Justin Verlander on the right night, going up against the limited Yankees who are getting a lot of reinforcements today. Should be an interesting matchup. It'll be fun to watch the kids make their big debuts. Kids making big debuts in a lot of spots around the league. So against the Yanks, against the Mets, a couple other teams have call-ups today that escape my memory at the moment, but we'll get into as we talk about the game by game. Just continuing down the board, it's bonkers how deep this is. We're how many pitchers deep? We've gone through 12 pitchers, and we're just now getting to Eduardo Rodriguez against the White Sox, who suck. And he has another very high ceiling opportunity, 9,500, 9,400. Freddie Peralta against the Phillies. It's a bad matchup, but a great pitcher, 10-6, 10-3, and a very, very good projection. It's rare when our 14th guy on the board is still at a 30-point FanDuel projection. Mitch Keller against the Cards. I don't love it. I don't trust it. It's Mitch Keller. He does Mitch Keller things, but there's ceiling there. There's a decent projection there, especially for 8,000 on DK. He puts him on the value board as well. JP Sears, not totally inept. A lot of power comes through that. A lot of power showing through in the model against for the Angels. I think it's a both-sided situation, but this is a value dart. This is a value dart. That's a moderate value dart. Not really this one. I kind of like the Marlins bats. So it's a really, really deep pitching board. Trey, I also can't believe it's September already, buddy. I'm with you. So, as per Cubs fans' request, Dennis Forgy, I hope he was here to see it. That was the detailed pitching breakdown at the top. But if you just want one favorite off the top, just go to the two top guys on the board. These are fantastic spots for both these guys. One will probably succeed, one will probably fail. It's just how this thing works. But I really like the opportunity for both Glasnow and Scherzer, and I think they're correctly priced. It's worth taking a look at the overall board. Look at all this same across this board. There were, I think there's 10 teams on here. It was like 9 or 10 teams below 4. It was like 14 of basically half the teams at 4.3 or below. Obviously, you've got a tremendous spot with the Blue Jays pulling a 7-point, call it a 7-3 almost, at Colorado against a nothing pitcher. On the other side of the same game, the Rockies 5.4 against kind of a okay pitcher, but Coors Field of it all is the Rockies there. You've got the Red Sox. I love this spot for the Sox against the Royals. That's a tremendous spot. I like the spot for the Orioles at 4.9 against the Diamondbacks, and for the Marlins against the Nationals at 4.8. Those are some of the higher run totals on the board, though. We've only got 3 teams above 5. So it is just a pitching-heavy, pitching-oriented slate. Dennis says, I had a lot of DK value. What about FanDuel, though? As far as a value pitcher? I mean, getting all these guys in the mid-range, that kind of sucks. Paxton, if you want to call 8,800 a value. It's an expensive FanDuel slate. You could throw the Rodon dart if you want to, 7,300. That's a great price for a guy who's been a 30-plus strikeout percent pitcher over the last 2 years, but it's a horrendous matchup, and he is yet to have a good game this season. So take it for what it's worth. Downboard, it's stupidly probably either JP Sears against the Angels or Tukey against the Tigers. If you happen to get an Angels version and Shohei sits with his injury and he's just they rest him for whatever reason tonight, that JP Sears spot will gain a little bit of ground for just not having to face Ohtani. But he's very hard to trust. He's not great. Gives up way too much power. But Tukey's the same. I mean, Tukey walks way too many guys. There's a ton of power coming through the model for Detroit. So we'll get into that. I think it's worth taking a look at the game by game now. I'm just thinking through if there's anybody else that's really viable from the super discount range on FanDuel. I really don't think so. My favorite guy below 9,000 is Paxton, and he's right at 88. I mean, there's not much in the below 8,000 range. It's tough. Tough slate. All right, let's get into this one. Coming up on 4:30, according to the screensaver clock on the pretty little picture over on the TV over there. I don't know where that was, but it looked to be some sort of very nice, lush, volcanic kind of valley with a little town nestled into it. South America, Central America, maybe? Maybe the Pacific Rim somewhere. Look very nice. So the Marlins, I mentioned wanting to get to some Marlins bats here. Nationals with Jake Irvin going 6,100, 7,800. Don't really see it. for Jake Irvin, 4.30 ERA, a 5.12 xFIP on the season, less than 20% strikeouts in 102 and two-thirds, 4.02% home run rate. That looks pretty targetable. No Soler in the Marlins lineup. It's a bit of a ding again for the Marlins. You end up with Garrett Hampson in there again. That's once again an odd trade-off in terms of the power trade. But Hampson, capable of putting the ball in play, does have a little bit of speed, might be able to create some runs. Second base outfield on DK for 21, triple position eligible for the dead minimum on FanDuel. Not completely inept in the 7 spot in that lineup. I actually like him better than like him better than Joey Wendell. I like him better than Jacob Stallings on the FanDuel slate. Stallings gives you catcher on DK if you need it. 9th spot, not particularly good, so that's not where I would take my catcher share, but he's there. Looking down the Marlins lineup, if you start up top, Luis Arraez, come down in quality, down to 349, 391 on base, really starting to slip into some really bad territory really bad is a weird way to put that when he's hitting 349 and competing for the batting title. But compared to where he was, he's taken a tragic slip. His August was atrocious when we looked at it the other day. We'll see what his September ends up looking like. But still, in theory, very, very good at finding base hits, putting the ball in play, getting himself to first base, ahead of what is still a pretty good power core with Josh Bell, Jake Berger, Jazz Chisholm. Jake Berger and Jazz Chisholm both hit homered last night. 28 home runs for Berger, 14 on the season for Jazz Chisholm, a 205 ISO for Chisholm, a 100 WRC plus, 17 steals. Probably their best overall player at this point. Needs to stay healthy, as I've been saying the last few days. It would be great to get him for a full season, see what he can actually do. Brian De La Cruz, interesting enough, 3,500, 2,700. He's cheap, 16 home runs on this season. Slots into the outfield for a fair price. Jesus Sanchez, I actually like a little bit more. Got the lefty in there against Jake Irvin. Only 2,800 on the DK slate, 24 on the FanDuel slate. Believable left-handed power, 10 home runs on the season, a 194 ISO. So capable lefty bat. I like that spot a little bit. 7.0 in the home run model. Really, it's the top 6 that I'm most interested in here. And then I'll bolt on some shares of Garrett Hampson, given the positional flexibility. Just helps you build out these lineups a little bit more. Wendell and Stallings are entirely skippable at the bottom of the lineup. 55 and a 63 WRC plus and 275 and 210 plate appearances. And you're not really missing much from the last few seasons. No real love for Jake Irvin. 61 to 78. Even as like a value dart, with the idea that it's just, the name on the jersey from the last few years being a low-scoring team. But this version of the Marlins, they're not bad. This is not a bad lineup that he's going to be facing. So I greatly prefer the Marlins side of it. You can see a lot of, if you look down the hard hit column there, you can see a lot of these guys. Very good hard hit profiles, very good barrel rates. So it's believable pop through the middle, even without Soler in there. Jiri Perez, like I mentioned, just faced this team last week, had a good start. So they brought him back to the show in the beginning of August. He had bouncy kind of starts, went 4 and change innings in both of them, gave up a few runs, wasn't great. Then the third outing, struck out 10 of 20 Dodgers on August 19th. Shut them out, 2 hits over 6 innings. Last time out, faced this Nationals team, one unearned run on 3 hits, struck out 7 of 21 in 6 innings on 76 pitches. The fact that he's gone 6 in both of those outings, only needed 76 pitches to do it while racking up 7 strikeouts, struck out 10 in that Dodgers start. I have to feel like he's got reasonable upside in this kind of territory. So at 88.96, I don't really want to say he's not in play, especially at that DraftKings price. It's a little bit difficult to trust, knowing that their goal with this kid is to limit his overall exposure in terms of pitches thrown. But with that in mind, he's just got too much potential. He's too good to ignore, given how he's priced relative to the slate, given how he projects if I give him the shot at 6 innings. So it's there. 2.68 ERA, a 3.79 xFIP on the season, 30.4% strikeouts. One of, I think, 3 guys on the slate over 30%. 74 innings, 15 starts. He's given up a little bit of premium contact with a 9.9% barrel rate, fly ball trajectory, 42.3% hard hits, almost 90 miles an hour of exit velo, 3.38% home runs. It's a little high, but it's not tragic by any means. And he's stellar at punching his way out of any trouble he gets into. Very, very high-end option. Could go out there and 5 innings, solid handful of strikeouts, deliver you a win and a very good start. 6 innings and an even higher strikeout total is on the board. Giving up a few runs is certainly on the board against the Nationals, but they're a low-priority team. C.J. Abrams gains his quality back going up against a righty at least. In the leadoff role, he's up at around 110 WRC+. I didn't check it today, but it's somewhere in that territory. He's been very good since they moved him to the leadoff role and excels against righties. 14 homers, 38 stolen bases. Definitely a piece of value, 4,700, 3,100 at shortstop. Just kind of a low priority stack overall. Lane Thomas, their best player, back in the lineup, 4,800, 3,200, 20 home runs, 17 steals, 114 WRC+. Dealing with some bumps, but it seems good to go at this point. Joey Meneses, Keibert Ruiz, these are your next two priority bats. Meneses, a decent triple slash, not that much power, an okay option for a mid-range price. He's not bad given the fact that he doesn't really cost anything. He puts the ball in play, doesn't strike out all that much. That's this team's main attribute, is not striking out that much, but they're going up against a very high-end strikeout pitcher. Travis Blankenhorn doesn't appear available on the FanDuel slate. That's why we're not seeing anything from there. It looks like he is available on the DK slate. Pull him up real quick. Debuted 2 years ago, 27 years old. 172, 226, 379 in 31 plate appearances in the show. This year in AAA, 23 homers in 455 plate appearances. That's not nothing. Last year in AAA, 15 homers, 10 steals in 369 plate appearances with the Mets organization. Handful of double-digit home run seasons going a few years back. He's playing at a somewhat advanced age, 25, 26 in AAA those last 2 seasons. So we take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but maybe there's a little something there. $2,000 dead minimum price on DK at second base if you want him. If you're stacking Nationals, I wouldn't necessarily skip him. You can include him. I would probably rather have Carter Kaboom, but so would the field. So maybe you just take the $1,300 discount and go to the kid who's hitting ahead of him. Kaboom, 3 home runs in 31 plate appearances, was at one point regarded as a fairly high-end prospect. The shine has come off a little bit, but 3,300, 2,900, the price is right. He has hit a little bit in his 31 plate appearances so far this year. Jake Alou, Dom Smith, Jacob Young, pretty low-end back-end here. Jacob Young, speed, if I remember what we saw yesterday when we took a look at him. I should be able to remember from day to day, but there's a lot of names kicking around with all these call-ups. Yeah, good speed option. 17 steals, 39 steals in 400 and change plate appearances across 2 levels of minor league ball this year. So a good speed option, if nothing else, with Jacob Young, 2,200, 2,000 at the bottom of the lineup. 18 plate appearances, got 1 stolen base, only a 63 WRC+, sub Mendoza so far, but very, very small sample. Low priority bats, no interest in the pitcher. So Marlins bats, Jody Perez, low-end Nationals bats, a few value darts if you want it, but very, very low priority on a big slate. And no Jake Irvin for me. Tyler Glasnow, top of the board. Top overall pitcher going up against a Guardians team that is not all that good. They loaded back up to try and make a weird playoff run after abandoning ship at the trade deadline. They picked up basically half the guys that the Angels cut in a very strange move. But they think they can make a move up the standings and I guess make a run for the playoffs. But Glasnow's in their way today. 32.6% strikeout rate, 2.90 xFIP at 3.12 ERA, 13.9% barrels is problematic, 48.1% hard hits not great, but only on a 5.6 degree average launch angle. The barrel rate includes elevated launch angle. That's what qualifies for barrels. I forget what the exact number is in my head, but so there have been some home run trajectories with some pretty hard hits behind it, but it's only amounted to 2.86% home runs despite 90.8 miles an hour of exit velo. So for the most part, he's kept a lot of the premium contact down. He's been okay in terms of the power, and he's otherwise been spectacular all season. 7.7% walks, a 1.05 whip, 17.2% swinging strikes, 33.6% CSW. This is really the only guy in the league who's relatively close to where Spencer Strider is for swinging strikes and for CSW. Everybody else that I can conjure in my head right now is at least a couple points behind this. Could take a look at the board, maybe some other day. On the Guardian side of things, if you want to fire away at Tyler Glasnow, it's really Jose Ramirez, and then close your eyes and pick from any of these guys. They're all kind of equally limited. They're all kind of eh. My favorite priorities after Jose Ramirez are Andres Jimenez, Gabriel Arias for his cheap power, but he's very, very limited, very high strikeout, not all that consistent. 8 home runs in 266 plate appearances. He's multi-position eligible. 3 positions for 2,100 gives him value on the FanDuel slate if you're going to stacks of Guardians, but it's pretty limited. On DK, you've got Bone Naylor as a cheap catcher, a little bit of power, kind of rolling 204 ISO, 7 home runs in 158 plate appearances, but there's a lot of really spotty options here. Stephen Kwan, very limited off the top, not getting on base enough, 101 WRC plus. Cole Calhoun, the memory of lefty power. He's got 3 in 87 plate appearances, a 182 ISO, a 128 WRC plus, a decent triple slash. But the triple slash has already started to decline. He's not this hitter. So I question the 3,400, 3,000 option for Cole Calhoun. Ramon Laureano is a mixed bag of a miscast cleanup hitter. Miles Straw is not a DFS option from the bottom of the lineup. Will Brennan with a 79 WRC plus and 375 plate appearances. Bad options, just kind of up and down outside of Ramirez. So very, very limited exposure to the Guardians lineup. Only Ramirez approaching the magic number for home run power. Jimenez is the guy with the next most pop in his bat. He's the only other guy in double digits for home runs on the season. A lot of limited samples here, but I mean, some of these guys should have gotten into double digits, the guys who with a little bit of power. Very, very limited shares of Guardians. I do like the Rays side of this one, going up against Cal Quantrill. I thought you were saying, I saw Poji. The only word I saw was scratch, and I said, oh, geez, who did I already miss that scratched? Lone Wolf, I agree with that. I was just about to get into it. I do think that Tampa Bay is a very good stack. They project out pretty well in this spot against Cal Quantrill. They are 6th on the board overall, 7th by FanDuel point per dollar, 8th by DK point per dollar. Oddly, a little bit low ranked for home runs, just kind of fall into the middle for home runs, but there's a lot of power in that lineup. There's a lot of believable power upside. Quantrill, a little bit strangely decent at limiting power, 88.6 miles an hour of exit velo, 37.6% hard hits, 2.61% home runs, but he's entirely gettable. He's got a 12.4% strikeout rate at 6.45 ERA and a 5.38 xFIP. That is a pitcher we know that we can throw some bats at. And we know that this Rays lineup, as up and down as they may have been of late, we know that they can produce runs against a pitcher like this. So I definitely think we want to get into some Rays, and they're cheap. They're easy to get to. The points per dollar is pretty good here. So Yandy Diaz, the only him and Randy Arozarena, really the only 2 pricey bats in this lineup. Brandon Lau is too cheap on both sites, but Diaz is a great starting point. 53.9% hard hit rate to go with 17 homers, a 179 ISO, and a 158 WRC plus. Excellent options up there. Brandon Lau, 11.3% barrels, 46% hard hits, 17 home runs on the season in a limited year, 358 plate appearances, 208 ISO, just a monster power hitter at second base for a fair price. He'll probably get popular in stacks of Rays. Typically in this kind of a situation, he is, but I think he's well worth going to, especially when you're going to this team. And he honestly helps average down the cost of just putting him together with Diaz and Arozarena. Arozarena is a multi-category star, 132 WRC plus, 21 homers, 20 steals, great contact profile, good walk rate. A lot of these guys there's very limited strikeout ability for Cal Quantrill anyway. Some of these guys limit strikeouts pretty well. There's some aggressive free swingers in that lineup. They've got a 25.9% strikeout rate collectively, but it doesn't really push upside in Quantrill's direction. And he's got a 7.2 walk rate, which isn't bad, but these guys are capable of drawing walks and exploiting even a limited walk rate like that. So I think with a contact-oriented pitcher, if they wait out a couple additional pitches when they don't take their swings, I think there's good upside for the Rays to just get on base a lot here and just create some runs, create some situations. And you've got a lot of guys to help capitalize on it, like Josh Lowe for 4,000, 3,200. He's maintained his quality all season long. It looked like maybe it was a small sample, limited breakout. We'll see what happens. And what has happened is at 400 plate appearances, he's sitting at 286, 328, 505, a 219 ISO, creating runs 30% better than average, 18 homers, 26 steals. A lot of the counting stats came earlier in the year, but he's maintained overall quality, still sitting in an 11.7% barrel rate. Very, very good option. Doesn't walk enough. 5.8% walk rate. His WRC plus could be even higher if he was drawing a few more walks. Isaac Paredes, 27 home runs on the season, a 251 ISO and 466 plate appearances. Luke Raley for only 3,900, 2,900, still has first base eligibility in addition to the outfield on FanDuel, which in this lineup has value since you want to go to a Rosarena, you want to go to Josh Lowe. It just helps you flex things around. 18 home runs, 13 steals on the season, a 136 WRC plus for Raley. Dynamite option late in the lineup. Oslevis Basabe has been somewhat productive, 103 WRC plus and 52 since coming up to fill in this lineup. Jonathan Aranda, Rene Pinto, all right, kind of limited options down toward the bottom of the lineup, but mix and match quality at least. Cheap prices help you offset other prices, or they're just entirely skippable late in the lineup. Tyler Glasnow, way up top. Rays bats, I like quite a bit. One of my favorite options on both sites. No Cal Quantrill whatsoever. Guardians bats, somewhere way down here. Only a couple shares, maybe a hedge position of Guardians, maybe some Jose Ramirez one-offs, maybe some Gabriel Arias, just as a $2,100 guy who does have a little bit of power upside. Maybe him as like a sneaky, completely unowned triple position eligible just as a tool on FanDuel for lineup building, but not really an actually viable opportunity. More of a lever than a good play. Salty Old Man says, shit, I'm late. Damn weed and COD. Call of Duty. Nice. I was about to read that as in my head, that when I read COD in my head, that was saying OCD, and I was like, wow, you'd think a guy with OCD would get here on time, but I think you meant Call of Duty because it says COD, not OCD. So maybe it's me being dyslexic that's the problem, or it's just the weed on both sides. Talked about this one up and down, I think. Let's keep on moving. Share your thoughts in the chat. This is a big, complicated slate. I'd love to hear what anybody has to think in the chat. We'll try and grab lineups as we go. We do have the Mariners here. Looks like it was as projected, I think, basically. Whoops. Seattle. So we're going to hear this a lot. This is going to be probably a pretty decent pitching duel. Two good starters on both sides. 3.83 run total earlier in the day for the Mariners. 3.75 for the Mets in basically a pick'em situation. Like we saw a lot of teams limited to 4.3 runs or below. A lot of teams below 4, only a couple above 5. So we're taking what we get. I think we do want to go to good teams with good DFS options, teams with good DFS options at fair prices, like the Mariners, like the Mets to some degree. But both of these teams are facing good pitchers that I expect to succeed in this spot. They both project out well for the money. Neither one is at a discount. They're both basically full freight. 9,300, 9,800 for Gilbert. And 9.6, 10.4 for Senga. I think between the two, Senga's got the better strikeout upside. 24.7% strikeout rate for that confirmed version of the Mariners lineup. Mets, a similar strikeout rate. There's a non-entry there. 22.9% for the 8 guys in the Mets lineup that have statistics. So a reasonable amount of strikeouts on both sides, but Senga's got a little bit more upside for it based on what he's done for his rookie season, his first season. I don't like calling these guys who have long track records in other high-end professional organizations like the NPB or the KBO. It's not necessarily fair to like kids who are like 19, like Joey Perez, or 20, to call these guys rookies. Senga's a first-year player, but rookie is a little unfair. You know what I mean? He is technically a major league rookie. But anyway, his first major league season, a 28.5% strikeout rate. Fantastic. 3.17 ERA, a 3.76 xFIP. He's filthy. That forkball is extremely nasty. 11.1% walks because he chases those strikeouts. He really goes fishing for them. And when guys lay off, it leads to some walks. The Mariners, not really the best at drawing walks. A lot of low single-digit walk rates to go with a lot of those high strikeout rate guys. So I really like the opportunity for Senga to find some strikeouts, limit walks. He's cut the walk rate down a little bit. It's at 11.1%. It was a couple points higher recently. The strikeouts have been fantastic all year long. He's been very good at limiting contact, avoiding barrels. When you're throwing the ball primarily dipping into the dirt and trying to fool hitters with sinking stuff, it's pretty easy to miss barrels. It's pretty easy to limit elevation and avoid hard hits and just make it difficult to square you up for premium power. So a 2.09% home run rate, a 5.8% barrel rate, 88.1 miles an hour of exit velo. It's been very, very good at checking power, which has a limiting effect on the Mariners side, but they do have a few guys shining through. Julio, just below the magic number. Cal Raleigh, just below the magic number. A couple guys hovering around it. It's the usual suspects for power that are always in this lineup, plus Mike Ford down the bottom for a cheap price. So there's a little bit of pop available for the Mariners. Like I said, I do think on a slate like this, we do want to embrace the idea, just because teams are limited in the run totals in Vegas, some of these teams are going to get to some of these good pitchers and score some runs. It's just a matter of figuring out which ones is extremely difficult on a slate like this. So you want to embrace options around some of the better lineups overall. And especially if they go underowned in some spots. I can't imagine either one of these teams is going to be all that popular. I don't think either one of these pitchers gets crazy popular, given a pretty deep slate and given how these guys are at relatively high or fair market prices. So this one's probably just going to fall in the middle across the board, so you can roster any part of it. On the Gilbert side of things, very, very good at limiting walks, right in the theme with what the Mariners want to do on the mound. Pretty good strikeout rate in the 25% range, and then keep walks to the low single digits. 4.5% is very, very good. A 1.05 whip. These guys just limit opportunity as a group. That is the team theme when they're on the mound, is just check opportunities. He's also somewhat effective at keeping the ball in the yard. 3.55% home run rate is higher than you want it to be, but it's non-tragic. 90.5 miles an hour of exit velo. Given the hard hits, the exit velo, might be fair to say that he's gotten a little bit lucky to keep home runs under 4%. It's a high home run rate. It wasn't exactly correct to say that he's good at checking power this season. What did he do last year? 2.48% last year. Better last year. Still high hard hits, low barrels. Year before, 3.38. Yeah, call him moderately effective at keeping the ball in the yard. Average, okay. So there's a little bit of pop available for the Mets, but they're really limited. Pete Alonso, only guy over the magic number. Francisco Lindor chasing it. Brandon Nimmo has power from the left side in the mid-range, but not really flashing it against Gilbert here. Francisco Alvarez late in the lineup does have a decent mark in the home run model. He's got 21 on the season, a 220 ISO, but kind of been limited over the last month or so. Really taking a dive in terms of the triple slash, down to a 98 WRC plus. The contact profile is still there, but it's come down a lot in recent weeks. A lot of the power profiles come from when he was fantastic over that surge that he made. 25.6% strikeout rate for the rookie catcher. Dan Vogelbach, DJ Stewart, lefty power, 2,800, 2,900 on DK, 2,300, 2,600 on FanDuel. They're both rosterable in this spot against Gilbert. If either one of them puts bat on ball, they could get you a cheap lefty home run. I just think it's a fairly limited spot for the Mets overall. The odds of stacking up a bunch of runs against Gilbert when he's not getting himself in trouble, not really putting extra guys on via the free pass or anything, it's fairly limited. So even if one of these guys does get you cheap home run, it's a solo shot, it's a 2-run shot, it's not a monster score. Maybe it does give you enough value, but on a deep, deep slate like this, you really need to land on the team stacks rather than the individual shots, unless one of these guys goes for 2, let alone like 3. And with so many options tonight, you might have a 3-home run guy on the board somewhere today. So it's homer hunting, but it's not really my favorite options to do it against Gilbert here. Bottom of the lineup, Ronnie Mauricio, 2,000. Dead minimum at shortstop on the DK slate, 2,500 on the FanDuel slate, making his Mets debut. He's their big call-up. He has, in AAA this year, 532 chances in AAA this year, and in a very similar year last year in AA. This year, 292, 346, 506 with 23 home runs, 24 stolen bases at AAA. He is a premium prospect for this team. He's a kid who probably will never relinquish a major league job after being called up. I doubt he goes back down and probably break camp with the team next year. He's here for his full cup of coffee for all of September, I would have to imagine. So we're going to see a lot of him. And he's a pretty high-end kid in terms of being a switch hitter. A lot of power, good amount of speed. Francisco Lindor might be a fair comp. Obviously, that's extreme praise. That's a very high ceiling for him to get to. But a similarly profiled, similarly tooled kind of a kid. So somebody we're really excited about to watch. 2,000, 2,500, fair price for him at the bottom of this lineup tonight. I think you can go to him when you're stacking Mets. He makes for a very competent wraparound play. You've also got Brett Beatty down there at the bottom of the lineup, back in the majors, 2,800, 2,000. Kind of failed over 311 plate appearances. The contact profile was still okay, 43.9% hard hits from the left side. It's not nothing, but he didn't really deliver much for that in the 311 opportunities. Going up the lineup, Pete's obvious. Lindor's obvious. Nimmo's a very, very good leadoff hitter for 44.29. He's got individual power. He's got great correlated scoring skills at 356 on base, a 122 WRC plus. And then Jeff McNeil, 3,800, 2,800. Piece of value, second base and outfield, correlates directly with these guys. Not a bad piece to bolt on if you're going to some of these power bats behind him. Definitely makes sense to go to some Jeff McNeil. Just not a great player, not a guy I like. Despite the projections, I think I give Kodai Senga a little bit of a nudge for the strikeout upside. I think he's got a little bit higher of a ceiling. So I'll go Senga, Gilbert, Mariners bats, Mets bats. On the Mariners side of things, I just realized I didn't talk about that full lineup. I just kind of blew through it before. You got Julio, 11.2% barrels, 52% hard hits, up to basically where he was already in his rookie year last year. He was outstanding last year. He's gotten all of his stats back in this recent 6-week surge that this team has been on. He's been the catalyst for the entire thing. Up to 6,400, 4,500. He's fairly priced like a superstar now because he is one. I was going to say basically is one. He is one. Everybody else in this lineup is affordable on both sites. So I do think there's potential there if they get Senga and they can manage to exploit his high walk rate. These guys are capable of hitting for power against him. So I mentioned that's where I touched on this lineup and why I thought I covered it. I mentioned the guys that are hovering around the magic number for home runs. Julio's obviously got a ton of power. J.P. Crawford, not so much, but he's got a 385 on base, and he correlates directly with the power bats. Eugenio Suarez, a little bit down for power this year, 18 home runs. He had 31 each of the last 2 years, only a 154 ISO. Still making very good contact. Strikes out at a 30% clip, but he actually does draw a few walks. Cal Raleigh draws a decent walk rate despite a 28.2% strikeout rate. Also makes tremendous contact when he does. 25 home runs on the season, is the team leader. 241 ISO, also the team leader in that, 114 WRC plus. So Cal Raleigh's a very good option for 4,800, 3,100, cleaning up at the catcher spot. Teoscar Hernandez, very good outfield option, tons of power, excellent contact profile. Team leading contact profile in both categories? No, Julio's at a better hard hit rate now, but very close to team leading in both categories. High strikeout option, low walk option. Very cheap, though, for his power upside. 4,600, 3,200. 23 home runs, a 192 ISO, 111 WRC plus. Pulled his season together a little bit during this run, along with Julio. Dominic Canzone, cheap, 3,200, 2,200. Has been putting bat on ball somewhat effectively, 86 WRC plus, but a 9.6% barrel rate, 41.5% hard hits, 3 home runs and 123 plate appearances. Very cheap option late in the lineup. Ty France, 41.27. 10 homers, a 107 WRC plus, a mediocre Ty France season this year. He was more interesting last year. Mike Ford, 31.24, got 13 weird home runs this year. 268 ISO is weird. Very high contact profile, also weird. As long as he's cheap, he's kind of like Ryan O'Hearn in the middle of the Orioles lineup. Mike Ford typically hits late in the lineup. But as long as he stays cheap, as long as he keeps on flashing a little bit of home run potential, this is the one thing he ever did do, was hit a little bit of lefty power. So as long as they don't raise his prices, he's fine to go to late in the lineup. 9.14 in today's home run model. Another guy who's very high strikeout. Not a bad walk rate at 8.9%. Could be higher, but could certainly be worse. And then Josh Rojas, mix-in option, 3,700, 3,000. Second base, third base on FanDuel is appealing, at least if you're going to Mariner stacks. He's not great at the bottom of the lineup, but he's somewhat effective. If you're building like 15 of these, he at least helps make things work with his positioning and his cheap price. So to round that off, it was Kodai Senga, Logan Gilbert, Mariners bats, Mets bats. All 4 corners playable. The bats are lower end than the pitchers, but I think both stacks are in play. Probably not going to be crazy popular. Decent value on both teams, but bad matchups. It's going to be an ongoing theme. Bad matchups, bad matchups, bad matchups. Good pitching duels. Interesting hitters in bad spots for cheap prices. so on and so forth. Andrew Stevenson making his debut for the Twins. 2,000 on the DK slate, not on the FanDuel slate. Wasn't expecting him. Andrew Stevenson. Come on, Graphs. Give me something. Yeah, he has been around. All right. I thought I recognized that name. He's 29. He's gotten 449 plate appearances in the show in his career. Debuted in 2017 with Washington. Hasn't played since 2021. For his career, 248, 322, 365, and 84 WRC plus, a 116 ISO, and 8 home runs with 5 steals. Minor mix-in. And he's facing Max Scherzer today. Probably not all that strong an option. I think Max and Joe Ryan are the key talking points in this one. Max, obviously, tons and tons of potential. Projects second overall on the board just behind Tyler Glasnow. Slightly less expensive at $11,000 on both sites. You're paying full freight for Max, but he's slightly less than Glasnow. I think he's got a premium matchup. There are tons of strikeouts in this Twins lineup. This confirmed lineup now, with apologies to Mr. Stevenson, who has no stats, 27.5% strikeout rate on the year collectively for this confirmed Twins lineup. Stevenson, was he playing in the minors? I suspect he was. He was. Low 20s, 22.5, 20.6 across 2 stops, Twins and the Nationals. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Nationals sample was all last year. So 470 plate appearances in the Twins AAA system. 16 home runs. Does have 44 stolen bases this year. Stole 39 last year in AAA. That's a lot of running. 204 ISO, 383 BABIP, 129 WRC plus, a decent triple slash. Maybe we give Stevenson a little bit of love back. If nothing else, he's one of the more likely guys to make contact against Max in this lineup today. Scherzer sitting at a 28.6% strikeout rate, 3.71 ERA, a 3.94 xFIP. Can make sure to pull up the chat to make sure you guys aren't screaming at me that like Max is scratched or anything. It's more difficult when I'm trying to fly through these to or not fly through, but like make okay time to keep an eye on the chat and to remember to click back to this window, but I'm gonna try and do it. So Max, 4.44% home run rate is really the only flaw. That comes on 8.9% barrels, 20.6 degree average launch angle. Obviously, he's been better at limiting contact in the past, better at being Max Scherzer in a reliable form in the past, but overall, it's not nearly as bad as it might be made out to be in a lot of cases. He's 11,000 for a reason. He projects really, really well for a reason. I love the spot, 13.4% swinging strikes, a 28.6% strikeout rate that is not all that far off the 30.6% strikeout rate from last year at this point. It is far off the 34.1% from peak Max back in 21, but from last year's Max, it's really not that far off. The ERA is higher. The xFIP is certainly higher. The whip is up a little bit. The premium contact is what's really jumped. But the barrels are around the same. The launch angles are around the same. The hard hits are up. The exit velo is a little up. But on most of these nights, Max is still Max. And I really like the strikeout opportunity against the Twins. There is some power showing through here. They're not popping for major numbers, but that's a lot of like mid-level type numbers. Right? A lot of 6s, 7s. We know there's some capable bats. We know there's some good lefties in this lineup like Max Kepler. I think Matt Wallner. He's shown power so far. 10 home runs and 164 plate appearances. A monster 273 ISO. Very limited, only 164, but a very good contact profile so far. Also strikes out at 31.7%, and not all of these plate appearances were against guys as good as Max Scherzer. Joey Gallo at the bottom of the lineup, striking out at a 43.5% rate, 14.6% walks, 3 true outcomes hitter, 20 home runs on the season, a 260 ISO. A little bit of danger for power, for sure, from a $2,300, $3,000 hitter. Across sites, first base and outfield eligible. When I go to Twins, I will have some Joey Gallo in my lineups, I promise you. But it's not great. He's much more likely to strike out. Put 3 zeros in your lineup, give Max 3 strikeouts, and thank you very much. But he's a power hitting option down there. He does have an 18.8% barrel rate, 54.1% hard hits. Jason Dominguez batting 5th for the Yankees tonight. I love it. We'll get there. Didn't mean to bury the lead. We'll get there. Royce Lewis, good right-handed option, hitting 3rd, 4,200, 3,200. Shortstop and third base eligible makes him more interesting on the FanDuel slate. A lot of infielders in this lineup, which is a little bit funky, but it makes him interesting as a stack when you have teams like what we talked about yesterday with like, there's 3 outfielders on Houston that I want to play, let's say. Say I want to stack with Tucker McCormick and Jordan Alvarez in it. Well, now I can go second base, second and third base, shortstop and third base, shortstop. I got a lot of infield options here. Maybe I'm grabbing my first baseman at Joey Gallo. Maybe I'm grabbing my first baseman from Houston. But these guys stack together with teams like that where you want to focus on outfielders. Really, you're only sacrificing Max Kepler, who I do like a lot. One of their better power hitters, leading the team with 21 home runs, a 235 ISO, 120 WRC+. Terrific contact profile. One of the only guys on the team that limits strikeouts, at least to some degree. And he's very, very cheap, hitting cleanup for this team tonight. So I don't love the idea of skipping Max, but this team does afford you the ability to roster a handful of infielders at the top end of a lineup when they're all the better bats on the team. So that's not without value when they also come at very cheap prices, when 2 of them are Jorge Polanco and Carlos Correa, who are 2 very, very proven power hitters in the infield over time. It's not a bad option for value here. There is a little bit of life to this twin stack. It kind of sucks that they're going up against Max Scherzer. I would greatly prefer to have this team on this slate against pretty much, 90% of other pitchers in the league. It would be more interesting. But I do think there's a little bit of potential here. Hopefully chase Max early and get into the bullpen, but I'll have more Max than Twins stacks for sure. Joe Ryan on the other side, cheap on DK, 8,600 puts him on the value board on DK for sure. I think he's on the FanDuel board, 9,900 on the single starter site. We've got a lot of guys in that $9,000 range that all look very interesting. I do think it's a compelling spot for some Joe Ryan shares. He's another guy pushing nearly a 30% strikeout rate, one of 4 or 5 guys in that upper range. 4.33 ERA, a 3.77 xFIP. Very good at limiting walks at 5%. He's given up a ton of power this season as well. 4.79% home runs, 41.8% hard hits. A fly ball oriented pitcher, kind of like Max. Same exact average launch angle as Max, actually. That's an interesting comparison point. So both of these guys, when they give up premium contact, when they miss their spots, the hitters get the fat part of the bat on the ball, get the right launch angle against it, they tend to give up home runs. Right? Power in versus power, becomes power out. And if it's on the right angle, it's going to travel. It's just physics at a certain point. So it makes sense that they have elevated home run rates. They're both a little bit problematic for these pitchers, but both of these pitchers are good enough to work through it. Ryan at this kind of a value price too, against a very good Rangers team, but one that does have a few strikeouts in it, one that he's capable of pitching through. I think there's a lot of value in going to some shares of Joe Ryan here. Chuck Deuces says Ryan will get smacked unless something drastic has changed for him. All right. I mean, he's not the top projected guy by any means. What's the profile you're looking at that needs to change for Ryan outside of just the power that he's allowing against this really good power hitting team? A lot of that is cooked up in gave up 4 home runs to St. Louis a couple games ago. He's given up a lot of power. I mean, that's undeniable. But he had a 4 home run game 2 games ago. He had a 5 home run game back on the 27th against the Braves. But who hasn't given up 5 home runs to the Braves this year? A lot of good mixed in with the bad. A lot of games where only the home runs have hurt him. But they've hurt him. No, there's no denying that he should be better than he is if it wasn't for the power. But I do think a lot of it is mistakes for a fly ball oriented pitcher, where he's got a lot of upside, a lot of quality. Right? It's silly to say, he's got to work clean innings, he's got to pitch well, but that's kind of the point, right? We roster him, we're getting him at a very good price because of some of these struggles, because it's a bad matchup. He's got to pitch well. I do think he's got the opportunity to pitch well. Doesn't put anybody on or get himself in trouble. Very low whip. Despite the home run struggles, despite this, a still good ERA, a very good xFIP underneath the surface, which normalizes the home runs. Excellent strikeout rate, one of the higher strikeout rates on the entire slate, and a very good walk rate. Chuck says this is a team that can hit 1 through 9. I agree with that. I've been talking about that all year. That said, Ezekiel Duran kind of slumping lately, down to a 115 WRC plus. Leody Taveras down to a 94 WRC plus, definitely taking a bit of a dip. Robbie Grossman, not an ideal option, 93 WRC plus over the course of the season. So now we're dealing with a slightly weaker bottom third than it's been all year. That top 6 is outrageous, though. Marcus Semien, Corey Seager. Corey Seager alone could ruin Joe Ryan's night. He could ruin his first plate appearance. There's no doubt that Joe Ryan is in danger here. This is a both-sided situation for sure. You guys can see the home run marks. I mean, that tells you all you need to know right here. All right, both of those guys over the magic number for home run power. Seager is in a great spot. 6,600, 4,200. You got to pay through the nose to get him, but he's well worth it. Him and Semien as a double play combination is dynamite. 20 home runs, 13 steals for Semien, a 118 WRC plus. Seager, 83% better than average creating runs. Then you get Nathaniel Lowe in there as a little bit of a price offset at first base, 4,600, 3,300, 15 homers, 127 WRC plus. Chuck says, I agree, just saying. Yeah, Chuck, you should know by now, buddy. I'm not criticizing your take, more just using it as a crutch to get myself into talking about the next thing that I'm going to talk about. That's why it's good when you guys talk in the chat. It helps when there's questions and stuff like that. It just helps me not sit here and just be like, blah, 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 reading stats. Like we're not, we can weave these things around questions people ask and stuff. It makes it more dynamic, makes it more fun and engaging. Speaking of engagement, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Follow on Twitter at rotoscouts. Like and subscribe over there, or like and retweet over there, or whatever the hell it's called. X those things. Re-X? Is that what we're calling it now? Trey kind of likes Tukey. Larry says, Cherry's guy Suwinski is batting cleanup. That's interesting. Pirates always have a little bit of compelling value, but completely forget who they're facing, but we'll get there. So the Twins are on the board for a limited amount of value for power. They have okay upside. Some interesting bats. The Rangers, a lot of talent in that lineup. Joe Ryan's good, but as we've been talking about, there is definitely the potential for them to get him. Both Mitch Garver and Jonah Heim in the lineup, so you get to pick your poison with your catcher option. Both of them are very, very good catchers. Garver, 13 home runs and only 235 plate appearances, a 239 ISO, a 139 WRC plus. Jonah Heim needed more opportunities to get to his 15 home runs, but he's got a 109 WRC plus, 266, 323, and 451 in the triple slash. Both guys put bat on ball very well. I like both options. We talked about Grossman, Duran, and Taveras being a little bit more limited. Adolis Garcia, 5,600, 3,700, 15.3%, barrels 50% hard hits, a monster source of power with 32 home runs. He runs a little bit less at this point, only 8 steals on the season. He stole, 25 last year? 25 last year. So ran a little bit more last year. We're trading it for a little bit of pop. I'll take that deal, 122 WRC plus at 246 ISO. Very threatening power hitter right here. I like both of these guys as home run options tonight. Max Scherzer. Rangers bats, Twins bats, Joe Ryan. How about that, Chuck Deuces? I like all 4 options, though. I do think all 4 options are in play. If I'm being honest, I would probably have Joe Ryan above the value bats from the Twins, just because I think it's a Max Scherzer kind of a spot. Stephen Leibowitz says send Terry gift cards for his local bodega. I brought up that same expensive thing of Jesus. It's 5:15 already. I brought up that expensive tuna snack to my buddies in our text group thread the other day, and my friend Steve Green took it upon himself to look up the price of that tuna thing online, and it was that a Snickers bar and 1 cheese stick cost me $8.25, and apparently that online costs like online retail costs $1.99. So presumably a Snickers you could get for about 99 cents, string cheese 75 cents. So probably got ripped off by about $4, which I knew. I mean, that was the point of bringing it up, like just to talk about how ridiculous they mark things up and how they gouge over there. But that was cheaper than I was expecting. Red Sox. Let's find the Red Sox lineup and focus. We have a lot to go. All right. Oh, good. This one. Red Sox, fire away. Red Sox bats against Jordan Lyles. There's no need to talk about rostering Jordan Lyles. Don't be crazy. Don't get too cute on this slate. There's no need to go to Jordan Lyles. There's no need to go to Hyunjin Ryu at Coors Field, even though he's kind of talented and not that expensive going up against the terrible Rockies team as a lefty, which we'll talk about in a second. It's just too cute. It's such a big slate. There's so many pitching options. There's no need to get too cute. So no Jordan Lyles here. He's got a 6.51 ERA, a 5.42 xFIP, and he allows a 5.45% home run rate. Doesn't that sound like it plays pretty well against this Red Sox lineup, or that this Red Sox lineup plays pretty well against that, I mean? 4 guys over the magic number for home run upside. Rafi Devers was the overall home run pick of the day at 15.6. I love the spot for Tristan Casas hitting cleanup. 10.4 in the model. He's super cheap. Never really got expensive. Has been a monster performer all season. 13.7% barrels, 46.5% hard hits. Gets on at a 366 clip. Has a 226 ISO, a 129 WRC plus. According to some tweet that I never bothered to verify, it's only him and Corbin Carroll as rookies over an 850 OPS on this season. He's just been dynamite all year. He walks at a great pace. Strikes out a little bit, but walks at a great pace. Puts bat on ball really well for a guy this cheap at first base. Justin Turner, positional conflict with Casas on DK. You can fit all 3 of them if you use the util spot on the FanDuel slate, but it's less than ideal because you got the 4-man limitation on FanDuel. So getting Turner in there, you're rotating him through a lot of those spots, I think. 3,500, 4,800. He's very fairly priced for a guy who's got such a good triple slash, a 126 WRC plus, 22 home runs. Justin Turner's a terrific option from the right side. Adam Duvall, a monster source of power in the middle of the lineup. 18 home runs and only 274 plate appearances, 13.5% barrels, 38% hard hits, a 317 ISO, a 143 WRC plus. He's been excellent. Yoshida, another guy, first year in MLB, star for a couple of years in NPB over in Japan. Came over here, excellent triple slash, really providing some offense for this team. He's cooled in terms of the power output, but he gets on base at a strong clip. He doesn't strike out at all. 12.3% strikeouts, 41.3% hard hits. Not expensive at 4,700, 3,100. Just a good correlated scoring option. A guy who can do a little bit of everything on the field for you. Trevor Story, 13.3% barrels, 48.9% hard hits in the tiny 76 plate appearance sample. I know he's at a 39 WRC plus, only 1 home run. He has stolen 5 bases despite only getting on at a 237 clip so far. Take the idea that he's running as a sign that he's fully healthy. Take the idea that he's running as a bonus for DFS and focus on the premium contact for the cheap price for a guy that we know is a star caliber player. Love the option for Trevor Story late in the lineup. Positional flexibility for 3,000 on the FanDuel slate. That's killer. Luis Urias, 2,300 on FanDuel as well with triple position eligibility over there. Terrible so far this season. Does have sneaky home run upside. Connor Wong, even as a catcher late in the lineup, makes reasonable contact. 8 home runs and a 158 ISO, 338 plate appearances. Not great, not a high-end catcher. Hits 9th as compared to an Adley Rutschman who leads off. You're going to lose a plate appearance there, but he's affordable at 26. He's an okay option in stacks of Red Sox. James Paxton, one of the better high-end value pitchers on the entire slate on both sites. 8,800 is a little higher than I want to pay for him on FanDuel, but I'm willing to go there considering when we looked at those, sub $9,000 guys, it was only him at 88, which is close to 9, and then like nobody below that was really all that comfy. Even though Paxton's really struggled through August, rather. Again, can't believe it's September already. Through August, he only had a 17-point-something% strikeout rate. I got it right here. 17.6% strikeout rate in 24 2/3 innings in his worst month in August. 4.84 xFIP for the month. Overall, the numbers are still pretty good. 25.2% strikeout rate to chases a lefty going up against this Royals lineup. A 3.99 ERA, a 3.90 xFIP. Neither one of those is great, but neither one of them is tragic. 3.99 home run rate, just under the line for what we consider a bad home run rate, which is 4+. Let's round it up, call it a bad home run rate. A lot of premium contact, but again, it's just below the line at 89.1, 39% hard hits. All of this is just below really bad levels. I question the overall depth that we'll get, but I do think there's strikeout upside. You've got a lot of strikeouts in this Royals lineup. Nick Lofton slotting into the Royals lineup. 22.9% because you've got Kyle Isbell down there at 18. If we focus on the guys in the middle of the lineup here, excuse Bobby Witt there, you've got a 24.6% strikeout rate to work with. It's really Bobby Witt and then a lot of just guys around him. So you get through Bobby Witt a couple times. 6,100, 4,000. He's appropriately priced. He's a star shortstop. 27 homers, 38 steals, a 116 WRC plus, a 225 ISO. Excellent, excellent shortstop option. You can one-off Bobby Witt in this situation. I don't hate that idea. Take a few shots against Paxton. It's a way to get into the Royals lineup a little bit. If they happen to have like a 4-run day against Paxton, odds are Bobby Witt's going to be a part of it somewhere. So that's maybe a little way to hedge off some of a Paxton share without really taking a big investment in a pretty bad Royals lineup. Michael Garcia up top, 4,500, 2,600. He's affordable. We've talked before about third base not exactly being ideal for him. He does have a 50% hard hit rate, which is good, but only 4 home runs. A .096 ISO on 50% hard hits is hard to do, but only a 4.5% barrel rate, so just not getting enough elevation, I would suspect. I don't know what his average launch angle is, but I suspect it's very bad. Not something I like to look at for hitters as much as we look at it for pitchers. Just because of how much for hitters it includes like pop-ups and stuff like that. It can skew a lot of guys. For some guys, it's an accurate measure, but for others, it can really skew things. So you need to look at it in conjunction with other things. That's why I leave it out. And barrel rate includes launch. Right? So that's what we're looking at there. So yeah, Garcia, really bad option off the top. Sal Perez, a dynamite power hitting catcher over time, only 4,200, 2,500 because he's only got 19 home runs this year, a 166 ISO, down at an 83 WRC plus. Bad season for Sal. Only a 3.6% walk rate, really not a threat to get himself to first base at all. A 289 on base percentage, pretty lousy. That's why the WRC plus is so low. The 19 home runs for a lot of catchers in baseball, that's pretty good. For Sal Perez, that's down. That's disappointing. Michael Massey, limited lefty for 32-22. Freddie Fermin, Nelson Velasquez. These two guys are somewhat interesting if you're stacking up Royals. They're low priority options overall. There's no need to go out of your way for them. But if you're just saying, hey, I want to build a 5-man stack of Royals, it would probably be like 1, 2, 3, 4, I guess Garcia. Freddie Fermin, a moderately interesting catcher. Sal has first base eligibility, so you get to play them both if you want them on DK. 284, 318, 482, a 112 WRC plus, a 198 ISO, 9 homers in 212 plate appearances with decent contact. Velasquez, pretty good contact over 86 plate appearances, 8 home runs on the board. Drew Waters, Kyle Isbell at the bottom of the lineup, not that interesting. 85 and a 68 WRC plus. And then Nick Lofton, who slots in as an alternate shortstop to Bobby Witt. I can't imagine we're going to want to go to him all that many times. No, Fangraphs, I do not mean Kenny Lofton, who was a phenomenal base stealer that this Royals team could really use late in their lineup. Even at this point, Kenny Lofton would probably be more valuable than like Kyle Isbell at the bottom of the lineup. I bet Kenny Lofton could still steal you a bag if he needed to. 14 home runs and 6 steals in 358 plate appearances at AAA for Nick Lofton, 24-year-old. Good hit tool. That's right. I did look him up earlier in the day. Good hit tool. Highly regarded for the old hit tool. 270, 344, 444 in AAA this year. Doesn't look like it really shined through in the minors so far. It's in the traditional scouting report, but not really seeing it in the numbers. Pretty okay at limiting strikeouts, draws a few walks. I wouldn't really go out of my way to get to too many shares of Nick Lofton on DK at 2,000 instead of Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt's your priority if you're going to the Royals. No Jordan Lyles, so Red Sox, big yes, high priority stack. They'll be popular, but it doesn't really matter. Popularity, even anybody who's popular on this slate, even that is limited with 28 teams to choose from. So popularity, really, I'm not going to sweat it with any of these spots all that much. Paxton, right there, good value option on both sites. Good ceiling. He could potentially be dinged by this Royals lineup if he continues in his bad form, but good ceiling. Jordan Lyles, Nothing on the mound. Royals bats only as like a minor hedge position to Paxton stacks. We need to pick up the pace. That is a lot of games to go. Yeesh. And we've got good pitching in like all of them. Could just say read the article. All right. Both of these lineups are in. Both of these pitchers are good. Zach Wheeler, very, very good at limiting power. Pretty good at finding strikeouts. Going up against a moderately talented Brewers lineup that doesn't really hit for a ton of power. And then Freddie Peralta, he's been rolling. He's another guy with around a 30% strikeout rate. I'll give you the exact number in just a half a shake. There we go. 30.6% strikeout rate over 139 innings for Freddie. Zach Wheeler joining him with a 27% strikeout rate. Wheeler only a 4.6% walk rate, a 1.08 whip. Just another terrific season for Wheeler. He's tied for fifth. There's a big group of guys tied for fifth in baseball with 17 quality starts. But Wheeler's very, very good at pitching deep into games, chasing bonuses. Very good at limiting opportunities, keeping guys off base. Only a 2.31% home run rate, a 5.3% barrel rate, 36.3% hard hits, 86.6 miles an hour of exit velo. For the money, Zach Wheeler is one of your more reliable, high floor, decent ceiling options on basically any given slate. Projects very well in this spot, 10-6, 10-8. You're paying full freight for him, but I want to get invested in at least some shares of Zach Wheeler, even on a very deep slate with plenty of upside here at pitcher. I definitely want to have my shares of Wheeler. 10-3, 10-6, same story for Freddie Peralta. You're paying full freight for him, but he's got a major shot at strikeouts. 3.95 ERA, 3.65 xFIP. We've talked before about how the hard hits have gone up from like the low 30s to the mid-high 30s. Exit velo has gone up a little bit. Home runs have gone up with that. Barrels are up from like the 6% range to the 8% range. But still, overall, pitching very, very well and has been on a monster roll. So I like the opportunity for Freddie Peralta. What did I include in the notes? Did I include anything in the notes that I didn't mention? Terrific 14.5% swinging strike rate, 29.7% CSW. The walks are high. The walks and the premium contact are really the only thing that's been a little bit of a concern for Peralta, but really like the opportunity for him here. You can see the ability to limit home runs, too, coming through in the Philly side of things. Check it out, Larry. Kyle Schwarber below a 10 in the home run model. You've been wanting to see it all season. There it is. Still 37 long balls on the season for Schwarber. Out of everybody on that team, he's got the best shot at one tonight. 267 ISO, 112 WRC plus despite a 188 batting average. That's because batting average doesn't really matter. 15.6% barrels, 47.9% hard hits matter. 17.2% walks despite his 29% strikeouts matters. 333 on base matters. A lot of power, a lot of run creation ability despite the low batting average. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Trey Turner, 5,900, 3,800, up to 19 homers, 23 steals, sitting at league average for WRC+. He's gotten a few homers on the board of late, if nothing else. Maybe a little bit of a turnaround in the mail for Trey Turner, finally. 5,900, 3,800, high-priced, worth it still at shortstop. Premium position in the lineup, if nothing else. Creating runs at league average, if nothing else. High-priced if you're only talking about a league average hitter, but we know he's better than that. 62, 4,000, full price for Bryce Harper, but he's delivering a full Bryce Harper season at this point. 15 home runs at this, up to 15 home runs now. I almost said at this point, right after I said it before. 14.1% barrels, 46.9% hard hits. The power's come back over the last month or so. Something like 10 home runs probably in the last 6 weeks, I'll say. Since he was in the low single digits for quite a while. Everything else for the season had been intact already, so the power coming back was the final piece of the puzzle. He's fully formed Bryce Harper again. Nick Castellanos, Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm, JT Realmuto, and Brandon Marsh. Very, very good options through the middle of the lineup. Everybody's got a little bit of power. Everybody's got a little bit of speed. Everybody's been creating runs. Average WRC plus in that group is 112. So a lot of guys good, not outstanding, not like, a lineup full of stars like what the Braves are doing this year, but a lot of guys who are producing above average for run creation, above average good mid-range power, decent stolen base totals. There's a lot to work with in this Phillies lineup at a range of positions as well. Second base, first base, third base, catcher, outfield. You can basically fill an entire lineup with just these guys. And they've all been very good this year. Brandon Marsh has been underrated. 3,400, 2,800. He's got 9 home runs, 8 steals. Not great for counting stats, but gets on at a 381 clip, 290, 381, 470, a 180 ISO, 131 WRC plus, mostly from the bottom of the lineup all year. That's a good wraparound play, if nothing else, for a very cheap price. Very good hard hit rate at 48.9%. Don't sleep on Brandon Marsh. Peralta's a tough matchup for power. He's a tough matchup for run creation. If you're going to the Phillies, they're kind of a lower mid priority stack, both of these teams. I think you can take a little bit of a hedge position with both of them. It's kind of like that, Mets game where I was saying you want to go to a few shares of teams that are capable teams, have capable names. I prefer the Phillies greatly to the Brewers side of that. The Brewers just going up against Wheeler. He's better at limiting premium contact, and he's been doing it this season. And just the better of the two pitchers overall. A little bit lower end in the strikeout rate, but I think better just overall in terms of the opportunity to clean sheet a worse team. Christian Yelich, 5,200, 3,700, 281, 370, 448 in the triple slash, 122 WRC plus, 17 homers, 27 steals. He's still a star at the top of the lineup. You can one-off Christian Yelich. You can use him at the top of stacks. William Contreras, probably the second highest priority player in that lineup. You do have Rowdy Tellez in the lineup today, 2,700, 2,600. Very, very cheap for some lefty pop late in the lineup. But again, against Wheeler, it's not really coming through in terms of the home run model here. Not a lot of power showing from Milwaukee. Willie Adames, only a 4.22 in the home run model. He's got 21 on the season, but he's a lousy overall hitter. 87 WRC plus overall. Carlos Santana, 3,600, 2,800. Affordable switch hitting power hitter. 18 home runs, a 182 ISO, a 95 WRC plus. Sal Frelick, 43, 32 in the outfield. Moderate output, 113 WRC plus. He's gotten himself on a lot of highlight reels, especially when he first came up over those first couple of weeks. Moderate output so far for the fair price. Mark Canha, Bryce Turang, Andrew Monasterio at the bottom of the lineup. Kind of mix and match parts. Canha, a little bit of veteran power, a little bit of veteran stolen base, and creating some runs in a positive sense. The other two below average for run creation, but providing a little bit in terms of counting stats. None of them all that great options. Kind of a more 1 through 6 to draw your priority bats. But again, not a great spot against Wheeler. So it's probably, go by the projection, we'll call it Wheeler, Freddie Peralta, Phillies bats. Phillies bats and Freddie, not all that much separation. And then kind of a fairly big gap down to the Brewers. But I think, at least for value, there's some fairly low prices. There's some playable guys, more so on FanDuel than on DK. No multi-position on DK also kind of sucks for guys like Monasterio, Turang, and Canha. At least by virtue of playing multiple positions, they gain a little ground for cheap pricing on FanDuel. Let's keep it rolling. Let me grab the Yankees lineup. Big debut for the Yanks. Couple of big debuts for the Yanks. Plus Everson Pereira on the lineup. Certainly don't want to leave him out, even though he's done nothing at the plate so far. All right, so let's look at this thing. All right, let's start with the spot we should start with, which is Justin Verlander. 9,800, 10.3. Pretty good projection. He's been up and down this season, but overall a 3.06 ERA, but a 4.59 xFIP that is probably the more honest run creation number at this point. 21.4% strikeout rate is definitely down, but only a 2.14% home run rate, 6.7% barrels. Not atrocious for power, not giving up a ton of home runs, not giving up a ton of premium contact. So limited faith in Verlander at this point. But I think there is definitely a gettable Yankees lineup. We've seen this Yankees lineup fail against much worse pitchers than Justin Verlander. So I think you can go to shares of Verlander. He's maybe a more limited option than the name brand might suggest, but he doesn't exactly project at the top of the board. So as a mix-in where you can say, all right, I want to make a decision relative to where the field is. Say the field's at, 8%. I can't imagine he's all that popular. 8, 10% if that. Do you want to go to 12% versus 8%? Do you want to be at 4%? Make your decision that way, but have a few shares of Justin Verlander. He's earned it. Carlos Rodon on the other side, 67-73. We talked about it at the top of the show. Not a lot of faith in that projection whatsoever against an elite Astros offense that just gets better against lefties. Hasn't happened yet this year, but if this guy happens to show up, if anybody's seen this guy, let him know we're looking for him. If that guy happens to show up tonight, there's a monster pitcher lurking for very, very cheap prices. 67-73 across sites. He's just not been that guy at all this year. Strikeouts are way down. ERA is way up. xFIP is way up. Home run rate is at a 6.06. It's a small sample, but he's just been awful in all of his starts. That's why he's so cheap. I don't really see the ceiling. I don't really see the opportunity here. Almost got there last time out. Faced 21 hitters. Struck out 7. Season high 7 strikeouts the last time out. Allowed a pair of earned runs on a home run, 4 total hits, and a pair of walks. Went 4 2/3. Completed the 6th inning once this season. That's all I have to say about that in the words of Forrest Gump. Not a great option. Take the Astros bats for sure. Whether or not you roster some Carlos Rodon, I definitely think you want to get to some Astros bats here. No Chas McCormick in the lineup, doesn't look like. That kind of sucks. Jake Myers instead of him, so kind of weak bottom third. Pena hasn't been great this season, 4,100, 2,700. He's cheap. You can build him in at shortstop if you want him. Only limited shares, though, and really only in Astro stacks. Non-priority bat. Jake Myers, a mix-and-match outfielder. Martin Maldonado, a very low-end mix-and-match catcher. You'd greatly prefer Jainer Diaz, who still has catcher eligibility where you need it. 19 home runs for him, a very strong season over 323 plate appearances. Good option as a 6-hitter. Jose Abreu, at least he's cheap at first base. Since you don't have the third outfielder, it kind of goes away from that equation that I was talking about where you want 3 outfielders from this team. You've got very good infield options in Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman above the 2 outfielders that you want to go to here. So really, the top 4 hitters, the expensive guys, are your obvious priority bats here. Abreu is just kind of a mix-in at 3,000, 2,700. 78 WRC plus on the season, 11 home runs. He's been a lot better in the second half than he was from last August to like this July, but he's still been pretty bad overall this season. This guy's outstanding. These 2 guys are outstanding. This guy's just okay at this point, but still only strikes out 13.1% of the time, walks 12.6% of the time, low strikeouts, and double-digit walks for all of those first 4 hitters. It's a deadly, deadly mix for a pitcher who's struggling this much. Carlos Rodon is not going to do this tonight. I'm sorry. That's just so thin, so limited. I don't like that projection at all. Great value price for him. I'll throw a few darts at it for sure, but don't like it. No need to follow me down that road. So yeah, Astros bats and the 2 lefties in the heart of the lineup, both very high prices. I hope that the field leaves them on the table a little bit because of the lefty-lefty, because neither of these guys suffers at all lefty-lefty. Major power upside for both of them. Jordan, one of the leading power marks on the entire slate at 14.28. Kyle Tucker, 8.69. 2 awesome power hitters. Tucker had stolen base upside. They both create runs like crazy. It's just a dynamite group of hitters. Average WRC plus for the top 4, 147 on the season. Monster team. Yankee side of things. DJ leading off. Struggling, but up to 13 home runs, up to a 100 WRC plus. Has had some interesting games lately. He's a $4,000 first baseman, which isn't great on DK. He's a $2,600 option on FanDuel with triple position eligibility, which is pretty interesting. Bottom of the lineup on the other end, Oswald Peraza. Interesting value option. Triple position eligible also on the FanDuel slate at 2,100. Third base shortstop on DK has its value for 3,000. He's a kid that we definitely have a lot of expectations for. He's a high-end prospect for them. So is Everson Pereira in the 8th spot. 2,400, 2,100 in the outfield for him. He was the call-up just last week or the week before. Premium kid raking in the minors. Kid that they're excited about. Austin Wells. 2,400 on the FanDuel slate. Not sure if they added him late in the day on DK. He wasn't in the initial DK pool, which kind of sucks because he's a catcher and he'd probably be very, very cheap over there. And he's an interesting hitter. He was one of the 2 premium prospects that they called up here. Austin Wells in AA, 263 plate appearances, 11 home runs, a 107 WRC plus. Hit another 5 home runs, had a 99 WRC plus, and a 198 ISO and 146 chances after they moved him up to AAA. very high-end organizational prospect, could steal this catcher job going forward. Anthony Volpe's been here all year. High-end rookie. Underwhelming season overall. It's going to get buried under the noise of the fact that he's the first Yankees rookie ever to go 20-20 in a season. Overall, still creating runs below average, 95 WRC+. The 192 ISO is great. The counting stats are great. He should have more stolen bases because he should get on base at more than a 296 clip. He's got a 219 batting average. Puts the ball in play from time to time, but 27.5% strikeouts, only 8.9% walks. He's got a lot of improving to do. The counting stats are great. I understand the excitement, but there's flaws. 3,800, 2,600 for DFS purposes. You can absolutely go there. It's an interesting little core of like the future of the Yankees is down here. This is the ghost of games past, of contracts given past, except for this guy who's still awesome. I actually think Gleyber's having a great season too. And then the guy that everybody's really excited about, dead minimum, 2,000 on DK, 2,500 on the FanDuel slate. The long-awaited debut of the Martian, Jason Dominguez. Kid, international signing at like age 16 when he was just like this hulking power hitter already and just been talked about ad nauseum for each of the last few seasons. In 507 plate appearances at Double-A, 15 home runs, 37 stolen bases, a 254, 367, 414 triple slash, and a 117 WRC+. Very brief stop in Triple-A, 37 plate appearances, a 179 WRC+. Hopefully he never goes back down, just stays at this level. Very young, very inexperienced, raw, lots and lots of power in that bat, lots of speed. We'll see what happens. Top of the lineup, Aaron Judge is in the lineup. Gleyber Torres is in the lineup. They're both priorities. If you go to the Yankees, I do think we can go to the Yankees for some value. You target the low strikeouts from Justin Verlander, the contact, but the power is not there in terms of what he's given up. You're just relying on the Yankees to deliver their power on their end of it. But Verlander's not a great target for bats, so limited expectations for the Yankees. It's more fun to watch. I'll definitely be tuning into this game. I don't know how much of the Yankees I'm going to roster in this spot. Judge is in play. Gleyber's in play. Gleyber's been really good. I mentioned it yesterday. He's up to 23 homers, 13 steals, a 121 WRC+, a 189 ISO. The power's really come back online over the last month or so, and he's cut his strikeouts from 22.6 to 14.2, bumped walks from 6.8 to 9.2. I really hope they keep Gleyber around. I really like him. He's only 26. He's only going to get better over the next couple of seasons. All right, let's keep on moving. So, I don't know. Astros bats, Justin Verlander, Yankees bats, don't do it, but Carlos Rodon value. I'll throw a few darts at it. Don't get mad at me if I have Carlos Rodon and he scores 60 FanDuel points tonight. He's not going to. Don't worry. It's not going to happen. Zach McKinstry in the leadoff role in the confirmed Tigers lineup. 543. How many games to go? Oh boy. All right. Tuki Toussaint. I know that we're kind of thinking about him as a value play. I kind of agree with that. 6,000. It's at least the right price to throw that value dart at the Tigers lineup on the DK slate. Damn it. Did I just put why did I get the Yankees lineup instead of the Tigers lineup there? The copy button must not have worked. Try that again. There we go. So, Tukey going up against the Tigers lineup, I can kind of see it. 25.4% strikeout rate for this collective lineup. There's a decent amount of strikeouts on board for him. He's got a 22% rate over the course of the season. It's not great, but it's okay. 59 and a third innings, 10 starts. Everything else about it is bad. That's the problem. 4.85 ERA, a 5.13 xFIP is even worse. A 1.50 whip with an atrociously bad 16.7% walk rate. That's just wildly unsustainable. You need to strike out like 45% if you're going to walk 16.7%. 7.6% barrels is pretty okay. 88.6 miles an hour of exit velo is fine. 41.8% hard hits is fine because it's a 5.7 degree average launch. So he's a ground ball oriented pitcher, which is a plus. 3.03% home runs. When he makes mistakes, they'll travel. There is some hard hit there. There are some good lefty power hitters on the other side here, plus a Spencer Torkelson. I don't love the spot, but I do think he's one of the few viable extreme value options on this slate. It's a big, deep pitching slate, but most of those guys are good, so they mostly land at, high to medium prices. There's only a few guys with any kind of viability from this 6 and 7, and change kind of a tier, and I think Tukey's one of them. I expect it to fail way more often than it succeeds, but every now and then it's going to succeed because the Tigers, for all the quality they may have gained of late in their lineup, are still a pretty bad team. So it's a bad pitcher against a bad team. Good luck. It's at least the correct price. On the Tiger side, there's power shining through in the model. I definitely want to have some Tigers. They're actually in my placeholder lineup because I kind of like this team. I like where they're at for power. I kind of like Riley Green just overall as a hitter. I kind of like Spencer Torkelson just overall as a hitter, and I kind of like Kerry Carpenter as a power hitter. Lefty, 20 home runs on the season, a 239 ISO, 287, 349, 526, creating runs 37% better than average. Good contact profile. I kind of like Kerry Carpenter a lot. Pretty cheap, 4,600, 3,000. Heart of the lineup. Torkelson, up to 24 homers, a 205 ISO. I said the other day that 30's probably out of reach. 25 might be realistic. He's on the cusp of 25 with 30's on the horizon. It's still way out there on the horizon. We're running out of time, but with a month left, 6 more homers, it's not out of the question. Kid's really good. I went from saying, wow, Torkelson's a bust at the beginning of this season to saying, wow, Torkelson's really good and being a little ahead of the curve on that one. I think everybody's caught up to the fact that he's good now, but he's not priced like it, 4,900, 3,000. He'll be popular in stacks of Tigers, but overall, compared to his talent, I don't think he's going to be popular enough. A lot of casuals out there still think he sucks. 14.4% barrels, 51% hard hits. Very, very good contact profile. Draws a fair amount of walks. Still needs to work on the walks. Still needs to get on base a little bit more. Strike out a little bit less would be good, but the strikeout rate's not atrocious. Below 1 in 4, just barely. Call it 1 in 4. But a 205 ISO, above average for run creation at this point, and just hitting for a lot of righty power. Carpenter, I mentioned, great power bat there. So Matt Vierling in the middle of the lineup here. He's kind of just okay. 259, 316, 363, and 88 WRC plus. Zach McKinstry, at least as a lefty, he's cheap. He plays 3 positions on FanDuel for 23, so I think he's in play more on FanDuel. 4,000 for shortstop, second base on DK. It's not great, but at least he's in the right spot in the lineup. A little bit too expensive for him, I think. 8 home runs, 15 steals. If you get one of those, you're in business, though, for the price. I like him ahead of Riley Green, who is probably the best overall hitter on this team. 285, 346, 445, a 118 WRC plus, 11 home runs. Maybe Kerry Carpenter's actually the best overall hitter because he does have a pretty good triple slash to go with all the power. But I like what I'm getting at here, I guess, is I like Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson, and then I'm willing to maybe grab some shares of Parker Meadows. Although at 3,300 on FanDuel, he's a little overpriced for a kid with 40 plate appearances in the bag. 144 WRC plus is great in the small sample. 206 ISO, a home run, 2 steals. That's fantastic, but this is probably getting a little ahead of ourselves. 3,200 on DK is a lot more reasonable. Jake Rogers has 16 home runs and only 295 plate appearances, a 223 ISO, a very, very good contact profile as a cheap catcher. He's viable against Touki Toussaint. Everybody in this lineup is playable at worst. Miggy has been very, very good against lefties this year and very, very bad against righties this year, but he's in the lineup. He's hitting 6 for some reason. Must have somebody to say goodbye to on the White Sox. Maybe the home plate umpire is somebody he hasn't shaken hands with yet. White Sox side of things, going up against Erod. I like the spot for Erod. 9,400, 95, probably going to, on a deep slate, just kind of cruise through the middle of any kind of popularity. Single digits popularity, I would have to expect at, an appropriate price in that mid-range with all those guys that are projected in the low 30s by FanDuel scoring that are high 8s, low 9s to mid 9s of pricing. I think Erod fits right into that group fairly. 3.21 ERA, a 3.86 xFIP, a 24.3% strikeout rate, limiting power very effectively, 2.3% home runs on 34.8% hard hits. Plenty of room for Erod. I mean, there's no room for anybody, really. It's too packed of a slate. I wish we could take half these options and drop them into, Sunday's slate will probably be atrocious, or Monday. Save me some of these options for other slates, but I do want to make room for Erod, I guess, is what I'm trying to say here. 7% below average for the White Sox collectively against left-handed pitching. 23.8% strikeout rate collectively against lefties. It's Lubob, a little bit of Eloy Jimenez, and then not much else in terms of this lineup. Timmy's been bad. Benny's been bad. Eloy Jimenez has been good when he's in the lineup. The contact is there. Not bad for strikeouts. 15 home runs is fine. 283, 26, 451 is fine. 171 ISO is too low. 110 WRC plus. At least he's above average for run creation for his 384 plate appearances. But this is a disappointing season again for Jimenez because he's missed so much time. It's not as disappointing as these two guys. He's the second most playable option in this lineup. Andrew Vaughn is the third most playable option. He's got a little bit of righty pop, a 173 ISO, 103 WRC plus, 17 home runs. Only a 5.24 on the home run model, though. He's cheap, 31.28. Very cheap at first base. But I greatly prefer the Erod side. There's plenty of strikeouts for him here. Plenty of strikeouts against lefties, despite the semi-capable right-handed bats. If he avoids the problem with Luis Robert, which is a big problem, 35 home runs, 17 steals, a 290 ISO, a 136 WRC plus, all this contact, he can get him with strikeouts, though. 28.6% strikeouts. Get Lubob a couple times, and then you're cruising through the rest of this White Sox lineup. So a potentially underrated option to keep in mind with Eduardo Rodriguez here. Erod, Tigers bats, Tukey value darts, low-end White Sox, really only some Luis Robert one-offs maybe. Not much interest in the White Sox. Pirates. Lineup is here. Ji-Hwan Bae, Brian Reynolds, Brian Hayes, Jack Sawinski, is Larry, I think, mentioned, hitting cleanup. Just trying to cruise through this, by the way, guys. Sorry for not engaging too much with the chat at this point, but I got to get some. It's 5:52. We got to get through some of these games and start building lineups at some point. So let's keep on rolling. I'm getting these lineups in. Dakota Hudson. I don't think I've got room for Dakota Hudson. 5,800, 7,700. The idea that he might pitch 6 clean innings against a pretty limited Pirates team for those, it doesn't take him off the board for 58 on the DK slate, where we need SP2 value if you're going to those extreme value plays. I do think he mixes into that group. One of the better projected starters in that group, one of the better overall matchups, but he's a really limited guy. 15.6% strikeouts, a 4.41 ERA, 4.84 xFIP, walks 9%, and giving up a little bit of power in the small sample. So I don't love it for the Dakota Hudson play, but I think with nowhere else to turn in terms of those super value pitchers for SP2 options, the real extreme discounts, he's on the board at worst. Low ceiling, low expectation, but potential to give you 6 clean innings. And 15 seconds of dead air to round out the Dakota Hudson play. Mitch Keller on the other side, 8,000, 10,500. Wildly different pricing from site to site. I think you can get way more interested in him on the DK slate at 8,000. That's a value price if nothing else. The Cards, good, not great. Talented, but not good. Whatever you want to call them. For whatever reason, they don't succeed all that frequently. They've got a bunch of positive run creators in their lineup. They've got good power hitters in their lineup. They've got a good mix of players with stars, with up-and-coming young kids. They just don't put it together a lot, or nearly as frequently as it seems like they should. Against a flawed pitcher like Mitch Keller, who has his bumps, who has ripped off, 3 good starts in a row? 3 good recent starts after 5 or 6 pretty bad starts. So it's Mitch. He's a roller coaster. He's up, then he's down. It typically comes in bunches. Last 3 starts, 6, 6, and 8 innings with 7, 12, and 6 strikeouts, limiting runs and not allowing a home run in the three games. So kind of back on form after he started the season out great, then cooled and was kind of crappy, as maybe back to form. But the Cards will be a good test for him tonight. I think you can go to some Cards bats. I think you can go to some Mitch Keller at 8,000 on the DK slate. On FanDuel, I have to expect that at 10.5 he's going to be pretty cheap pretty low owned by comparison to the other starters. So a few darts for a high price Mitch, knowing what you're getting into, is not out of the question. It's a pay up to be different kind of a spot. He could succeed. He could spike a ceiling score against his team. It's thin. It's not great. It's low probability, but it's on the board. I don't love the price, but the price will keep the ownership away. On a slate where I already said I don't really care about ownership because it's so deep, because there's so many good options. So it's a limited option for Mitch just because of how rocky he is. Stark Pirates, Ji-Hwan Bae in the leadoff spot, more of a stolen base option that doesn't really get himself on base enough, a 71 WRC plus. Not all that interesting, cheap, plays multiple positions. Brian Reynolds, one of their priority bats, 5,000, 3,500, fair price, 19 homers, 10 steals. He's fine. Ke'Bryan Hayes, I like a lot, 49.5% hard hits. He should be better, but he's getting better. We're creeping up, 99 WRC plus, 11 homers, triple slash is improving, hard hit profile is already there. Jack Suwinski is their best power hitter, 3,700, 2,700 for a cleanup hitter against Dakota Hudson from the left side of the plate. 17.1% barrels, 46.3% hard hits, 22 homers, a 238 ISO. You can definitely sell me some shares of Suwinski for 3,700, 2,700. Andy Rodriguez, good catcher bat, young catcher, 6.3% barrels, 38% hard hits. It's not really come through fully yet. Only a 136 ISO, 2 home runs in his 120 plate appearances. I'm a believer. I'm a buyer at those prices. Very cheap, particularly where you need catchers when you're stacking Pirates. Not one to go out of your way for if you're not stacking Pirates. Josh Palacios, moderate mix in, little bit of pop in the lefty bat, but a limited hitter overall, only if you're stacking Pirates. Leover Peguero, only if you're stacking Pirates, really. Alfonso Rivas, Jason DeLay, kind of not even if you're stacking Pirates. Very, very limited options at the bottom of the lineup. Card side runs a lot deeper. It's a 1 through 9 lineup. They, again, should be better than they are. Bottom of the lineup, Tommy Edman, 94 WRC plus. Not a great season from Tommy, but always good for some counting stats. 12 homers, 20 steals. When he's getting on base at a higher clip, he's much more valuable. Tyler O'Neill down to a 98 WRC plus in the 6th spot in the lineup. Power for days, though. 3,600, 2,600. You just book the discount and take the power upside when you're going to Cardinals bats. I like Tyler O'Neill a lot on most slates. It's burnt me probably more often than it's succeeded this year, but I'm happy to keep going back to it as long as he's that cheap. Jordan Walker, 3,500, 2,500. An okay rookie season. 267, 335, 431, a 112 WRC plus. Effective enough for cheap prices at the bottom of the lineup. Mason Wynn hasn't really done anything yet in 41 plate appearances. He's got exactly a 1 WRC plus. 99% worse than average creating runs in his 41 plate appearances so far. Might as well have not taken the field. Lars Nootbaar back in the lineup, 4,500, 3,300 gives you a good little option for moderate power. Speed, very good on base skills, 382 on base, a 131 WRC plus over 388. Direct correlation with the team's power core. Nolan Goldschmidt and Paul Gorman is almost what I just said to share. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Gorman, Nolan Arenado. 3 dynamite power options in a row. Corner infield and second base. Gorman's got second and third base eligibility to compete with Arenado on the FanDuel slate, but you're primarily just going first, second, and third with those 3 players. A lot of power, 22 home runs, 24 home runs, 26 home runs. Everybody's above average for run creation. Some great options. Wilson Contreras, very, very playable catcher for 4,000 on DK. Mix and match option at 2,700 with a little bit of power in his bat on the FanDuel slate. It's honestly, it's 4 corners that are all kind of like meh, kind of mid priority, low priority. Probably Cardinals bats, Mitch Keller in small doses, like small doses of Cards bats, small doses of Mitch Keller, smaller doses of Pirates bats, and then smaller doses than that of Dakota Hudson. But that's, Dakota Hudson on FanDuel I don't think is all that necessary. But on DK, I do think he's kind of a necessary part of the player pool to get to any kind of extreme value-based combinations at SP2. It's a little bit of an uptick for Dakota Hudson on the DK pool. Thankfully, we don't have to talk about pitching in this one. Do not roster Chris Flexen. Do not roster Hyunjin Ryu. He might be good enough to get through Colorado on this slate, but you're just being too cute. Lefties against Colorado. I know I said myself that we're going to target that all season, but I didn't mean with a lefty like this while he's pitching at Coors Field on such a deep pitching slate. If there were 3 games today, maybe we could talk about it. It's just not worth it today. That's why I didn't even let him get a price. Chris Flexen, just dead. Throw Blue Jays bats at him. They were projected over 7 runs, by far the highest run total by more than 2 full runs. 17% strikeout rate and a 5.67% home run rate is basically all you need to know about Chris Flexen. Throw bats at this guy. George Springer back in the leadoff spot, 51.36. Great pricing for Springer. He's down a little bit on the season overall. Not a star caliber George Springer season by any means. Still makes pretty stout contact, 8.6% barrels, 40.2% hard hits, 17 homers, 19 steals, a 102 WRC plus. he's given me enough to justify at least those, an investment in the player that I know that he really is. Davis Schneider, 4,834, 6 quick home runs in 56 plate appearances, a 280 WRC plus. What's not to love about a guy like that? He's a little bit expensive on, particularly on DK at 48. 34 on FanDuel actually is also particularly expensive. Second base, though, work him into some stacks. It's not like you're creating a major positional conflict here. So I don't mind Davis Schneider, especially hitting second. There's a little bit of pop there. Obviously showing dynamite returns in the home run model. 11.16 to hilariously lead this team. That's a little bit skewed. I don't know why, though, because it's got a lot of... that's interesting. Because it's positionally regressed against 2,000 plate appearances, league average plate appearances in the model. So that's just power coming through for whatever basis. Vladdy Guerrero, 5,500, 3,800. Not really seeing a price bump for going into Coors Field and facing Chris Flexen. We just had Ronald Acuna Jr., who I know is way, way, way outperforming Vladdy Guerrero. But on a talent for talent basis, if we exclude the stolen bases, they're moderately comparable hitters. Maybe Guerrero is 50% the hitter, 80% the hitter, I meant to say, not 50%, 80% the hitter that Acuna is, whatever you want to call him. It's a lower batting average. I get it. He's not the same guy. But we're talking about a star caliber hitter who we've seen be a star caliber hitter. The fact that he's 1,500 less than Acuna was, the fact that on FanDuel he's not at all increased, he's 3,800, he seems cheap is what I'm getting at. Relative to where we just saw all the Braves priced, given who Vladdy Guerrero really is, given what his contact profile is, this is cheap for Vladdy Guerrero in this spot at Coors Field, just compared to what we just saw. Brandon Belt, 4,200, 3,300, way cheap. Coors Field game, lefty bat, 13.7%, barrels 15 home runs on the season, a 215 ISO in only 374 plate appearances. One of their best run creators on the entire season at 132 WRC plus. He strikes out a ton, but he also walks. He hits for a ton of power. He's way too cheap. Danny Jansen, too cheap for his price, especially where you need catchers at 4,100 on DK. He's got 16 home runs and 298 plate appearances, a 238 ISO. He's a very good power hitting catcher. For a very cheap price in a Coors Field game. I expect these guys are going to be just crazy, crazy popular because they didn't raise any of their prices on either site. Whit Merrifield, second base and outfield, just like Davis Schneider. You can mix and match those guys to your heart's content. Merrifield, handful of home runs, good stolen base total, good at getting himself to first base, good hit tool, capable player across the board. Dalton Varsho, good power. Ernie Clement, capable hit tool, 2 positions, 2,600 on DK. 2,500 on FanDuel. Kevin Kiermaier mostly here for defense, but a 105 WRC plus on the season. Not bad. On the other side, the Rockies, if you're going to that lineup, it's basically the guys you would ever go to in this lineup. Maybe some Charlie Blackmon off the top, but lefty-lefty's not great for Charlie. Lefty-lefty's not great for Ryan McMahon. Lefty-lefty's okay for Nolan Jones, but he's hitting way down lineup, 4,700, 3,500. He should just be hitting like up here every day for this team. I don't know why they haven't made me the goddamn manager of the Rockies at this point for all the advice I've been giving them all year. Brendan Rodgers, capable enough righty bat, cheap at second base on both sites, mid-teens home runs each of the last 2 years. Hunter Goodman, 34 home runs in the minors, 357, 375, 571 with a 214 ISO since coming up. No home runs in his 16 plate appearances, but a 20% barrel rate, 50% hard hits. Very cheap. Catcher on FanDuel, first base on DK, which is essentially the same thing. Cheap enough option. I kind of like these 3 guys. Excuse me. If I'm going to Rockies, these are probably my 3 top priority bats, oddly, because like I said, he sucks against lefties. He's not great against lefties. He's okay, but it's more hit tool oriented. You're not getting a lot of DFS quality out of Charlie Blackmon at this point, lefty. Ezekiel Tovar, not all that interesting. Phil shortstop for a cheap price, 15 homers, 8 steals, but 76 WRC plus overall on the season. These are my interesting bats here. And then Eleodoro Montero, projectable power from what he'd done in the minors, but only a 50 WRC plus, 5 homers and 197. Brenton Doyle, very inconsistent for counting stats, sub-Mendoza line. Bats. Blue Jays favorite over the Rockies. Lineups. Got lineups. Nolan Shanuel leading off. Luis Renifo, Kyron Paris at the bottom of the lineup for the Angels. Couple of lefties that I think are at worst not off the board here. Pablo Sandoval, or Patrick Sandoval rather, I am actually interested in on the Angel side of things, given that he's got a matchup against against the lefties. Given that he's got a matchup against the lefties who lose quality against an athletic pitcher. Wait, that's not right. Given that he's facing the Athletics who lose quality against left-handed pitching to some degree because they lose Seth Brown, they lose Ryan Noda in this lineup, I think there's upside for Patrick Sandoval, particularly at 72 on the DK slate. That is a major source of DK value. Not quite as cheap as some of those other guys, but you're bordering on the extreme discount SP2 tier over there, and you can see how well he projects by comparison to those guys. So this is probably your top priority SP2 option on DK, or at least one of them. 20% strikeouts, not great. 10.8% walks, not great. 3.95 ERA with a 4.46 xFIP, not great. But he's very good at limiting power, and that's the only thing these guys do, is hit the infrequent home runs. So if you're taking the power away, I'm perfectly happy to go to shares of Sandoval. I hope he finds a few additional strikeouts. These guys will give him the opportunity to. I think it's a very good option here. Athletics side, JP Sears, a lot more difficult to trust. I definitely want to have some Angel stacks for every share of JP Sears that I get to, which won't be many. Probably none on the FanDuel slate. 7,600, it's a fair price. There are strikeouts here for him, but for every share of them I get on either site, I would want to have at least one share of Angel stacks. He's given up a 5.19% home run rate, a 4.80 ERA, a 5.05 xFIP, but he does strike out 22.6% over 140 and 2/3, only walking 6.2%. The premium contact is awful. Swinging strikes are good. Whip isn't terrible. Walk rate is very good. So we've seen him succeed in spots. It's probably too cute by far on a deep slate, particularly on FanDuel where you only get one bite at it. As an SP2, I think he's on the board in limited fashion as an extreme discount SP2 on DK. Angels lineup, there are plenty of strikeouts here. That strikeout rate averages 23.2%. If you skip Shanuel off the top, it goes to 24.6%. Shanuel, 46 plate appearances so far. He's been outstanding since getting drafted for a kid who was drafted like 8 weeks ago. It's pretty good, but hasn't hit for any kind of power yet and very limited sample. He's very cheap, top of the lineup, killer correlation spot with Shohei Ohtani. Luis Renifo, 3,900, 2,700. I like him when he's sneaky late in the lineup rather than when he's a focus guy early in the lineup. He's better for sneaky power than he is for like expectations of actual power or delivering like on base skills or anything. But he's in a great correlated scoring spot. He plays multiple positions on both sites and he's cheap. Shohei Ohtani is Shohei Ohtani. Brandon Drury, 4,300, 3,200, 19 home runs at 218 ISO. Still a very good source of right-handed power. Survived the purge there. So did Mike Moustakas. Lefty pop for Moustakas, 3,700, 2,500 first base, third base. Good positional flex. Logan O'Hoppe, good power hitting catcher. 5 home runs at 202 ISO and 98 plate appearances. Very good contact profile, 3,200, 2,600. Easy to get to. Randall Grichuk, Mickey Moniak, and Kyron Paris to round out the lineup. Did I write up Kyron Paris? Can I give you guys a factoid about Kyron Paris from the article? I cannot, because he wasn't on the FanDuel slate and I didn't bother to look him up. Kyron Paris. I typed Kyron Parr into Fangraphs and it suggested Isaac Paredes. It did give me on the minor league side, of course, Kyron Paris. Age 21, directly called up from Double-A, where he had 14 homers, 44 stolen bases, and 514 plate appearances this year. That's not nothing. 21 is very young. They've been really aggressive with their early call-ups this year. They also depleted their farm system by making those stupid trades for a lot of the guys that they ended up waiving. But they've aggressively promoted a lot of young kids this year. 2,000 dead minimum. Maybe you roll the dice a couple times. A little bit of sneaky speed maybe against JP Sears, but not a great option. On the athletics side, again, limited power potential for a lot of these guys. So the guys I would normally be interested in when going to athletics would be Zach Geloff, to some degree, Estuary Ruiz, but he doesn't get on base nearly enough. 53 steals despite a 303 on base in 430 plate appearances is damn impressive, but not consistent enough. Only a 79 WRC plus. Brent Rooker is the other interesting option here. 14.9% barrels, 48% hard hits. He's very cheap at this point for the power potential. Not a regular deliverer of power, but he's not priced like one anymore. So we can go to Brent Rooker here. Go to Zach Geloff here. But again, limited options for home runs on the right day for Patrick Sandoval. And then you got a lot of just weak supporting cast. Shea Langoliers, an okay power hitting catcher, but a very limited guy overall. 83 WRC plus, but 16 home runs. He's always cheap. He's always unpopular. 5th in the lineup. It's an okay lineup spot. Jordan and Aledmys Diaz. No relation that I know of. Both mediocre options. Jordan better than Aledmys, but Aledmys gives you triple position eligibility on FanDuel, dual position eligibility on DK. Jonah Bride, Nick Allen, mix and match kind of options there. Patrick Sandoval, Angels bats. JP Sears value darts, particularly on DK at SP2. Very limited, very low expectation value darts. No real interest in the Athletics bats, only as a hedge position. 3 games to go? 3 games to go. I think I can. Got both lineups for this one, too. How about that? Brandon Crawford making his triumphant return to the Giants. I think somebody's knocking on my front door. I'm not going to go answer my door right now. Sorry. Giants, Padres. We've got options here. Michael Wacha. Oh, excuse me. This is... What did I grabbed that game while loading up this game. This game's not in yet, so sorry. We've got the... you guys want to talk about that one first? Let's talk about the Giants and the Padres first, since I just loaded it up. We'll come back to that other one because it's less interesting. Michael Wacha drawing a really interesting projection in this one for 8,300, 9,400. One of the top guys on the board. Unbelievably, but kind of believably because the Giants strike out quite a bit. There's a little bit of threatening lefty power. He's not really giving up a lot of power. 34.5% hard hits on 87.7% miles an hour of exit velo. 2.44% home runs. A spectacular 2.84 ERA on the season, but only a 4.59 xFIP. Got to keep that in mind. That's a big warning sign. Only 22% strikeouts, but a little bit of edge for more against a team that's given up a lot of strikeouts and some big performances to guys who are at or around Michael Wacha's talent level. 94, not overly comfortable to pay that for him on FanDuel, but he's okay. I think there's a little bit of potential there. I think he could approach this score. You definitely need some other pitchers to fail or come within the differential where the salary makes a difference for you there. But I do think there's a little bit of potential for Michael Wacha on this slate. At 8,300 is a good value play on the DK board. There's some upside here. Tristan Beck on the other side, 51, 59. I don't think we're getting enough innings out of Beck, probably 4 innings, something like that. Pitching mostly in a hybrid role, 71 2/3, 21 2/3 strikeout rate, 3.52 ERA, a 4.25 xFIP. Not really tragic in terms of the home runs, but he's facing a team with a pretty good top end at least. Top 6 is pretty good for this Padres team. So I think there's some value on the Padres side. You've obviously got the star quality, and Beck just probably not going to work deep enough. Hasn't completed 5 innings yet this year. Probably not going to do it tonight. Ha-Sung Kim off the top. Multi-position eligible on both sites. Very cheap. 5,000, 3,100, 277, 369, 436 with a 159 ISO, 17 home runs, 29 steals. Very good option for correlated scoring with Fernando Tatis. Their true best player, Juan Soto, still cheaper than Tatis on both sites. Soto's got 25 home runs. He's tied with Manny Machado for the team lead. Both of them hit, all 3 of those guys hit the ball extremely hard with regularity. Everybody creates runs above league average. Everybody, including Xander Bogaerts, is above league average for runs. He's got his head still above water at 103. He keeps on declining down to 258, 329, 391. I continue to believe he's got a handful of counting stats in home runs and stolen bases. He's been okay. I believe that the quality September is going to come. The price is fine for who he is at this point. Garrett Cooper, somewhat interesting, very cheap, little bit of right-handed power at first base. Campusano, playable catcher, good results so far, over 107 plate appearances, 5 home runs, a good triple slash, good run creation numbers. Trent Grisham and Matthew Batten mix and match options late in the lineup. Grisham only a 90 WRC plus, but interesting for counting stats at the very least. Good contact profile, oddly good contact profile. Giants side, you're primarily going to the lefty power bats. Lamont Wade, Jock Peterson, Mike Yastrzemski, a little bit of Tyler Estrada mixed in. Wilmer Flores has been their best overall bat all season at 291, 352, 528 with a 139 WRC plus. A lot of power for all those hitters. Lamont Wade Jr. still gets on base at a decent clip ahead of these guys. He's really cooled off, but he's cheap. He still draws a pretty good walk rate, still pretty good contact profile for 35-26. Yaz has power and Jock Peterson have power from the left side. JD Davis has a little bit of pop, but he's really cooled on the right side of the plate. Bailey's cooled off a lot since his hot start. Crawford mix and match option. Wade Meckler mix and match option. Let's go back to that other game. So this one was Mike Wacha, Padres bats, Giants bats. No real love for Tristan Beck. Got to talk Orioles because I think it's a priority spot going up against Zach Davies, and I think the Diamondbacks are very playable back the other way against Cole Irvin. I don't want any shares of either one of these pitchers on either site. Even though they're value priced, I just like both of these teams too much. Both of these teams are showing a little bit too much to me in the model in terms of where they come out in overall fantasy projections. I like both lineups. I think they're affordable, and I want to get to both sides of this. So very limited pitchers on both sides. Ugly ERAs, ugly xFIPs. Not awful on either side in terms of the home runs allowed this year. A little bit of barrel rate there for Cole Irvin that's targetable in his small sample. He strikes out a few more. Zach Davies, we know, is targetable over time. Pitching is done. Adley Rutschman off the top of the Orioles lineup. 5,400 stellar catcher option on DK. Excellent option at only 3,100 on the FanDuel slate. 16 homers, a 119 WRC plus, 366 on base at the top of the lineup ahead of Gunnar Henderson, Anthony Santander, and Ryan Mountcastle, who are all at or about the magic number for home run upside. Henderson 10.07, Santander 10.13 leads the team tonight, and also leads the team with 26 home runs and a 235 ISO on the season. And then Mountcastle, with all his tremendous right-handed power, only costs 4,800, 3,300 at first base. Killer first base option tonight. Ryan O'Hearn, long as he's cheap, 3,500, 2,600, multi-positions, still hitting a little bit from the left side. He's cooled a little bit in terms of the triple slash. The turn is probably here. It's probably declining, regressing back to the norm, but as long as he's cheap, you can still go there if he's hitting in the middle of the lineup. Cedric Mullins, 30-30 player to find hitting 7th for cheap pricing, is a dynamite option down there. He could hit as high as here in the lineup, but wherever he is, he's worth going to. Austin Hayes, moderate talent, 13 home runs, a decent triple slash, a 115 WRC plus, highly playable for 4,400, 2,800. Urias, power upside from the bottom of the lineup, triple position eligible for 25 on FanDuel. Adam Frazier, the power output for him is less realistic. Urias is not hit for as much power as he did last year. Frazier's hit for more power than he has in the last 2 years put together. D-back side of things. Ketel Marte, price down, 5,400, 3,400. Second base, star caliber player, 21 home runs, a 203 ISO, 123 WRC plus. Sign me up for some Ketel Marte. We get Buddy Kennedy climbing the lineup and Corbin Carroll falling against the lefty. But against a weak lefty like this, I wouldn't be shocked if Corbin Carroll, who's returned to form over the last couple of weeks, ends up in the second spot in the lineup. Tommy Pham, Christian Walker, Lourdes Gurriel, Evan Longoria, all very, very playable right-handed bats against the lefty. Pham, power and speed. Christian Walker, 28 home runs on the season, a 248 ISO, 11.4% barrels, 40.8% hard hits. Excellent option in the heart of the lineup. Lourdes Gurriel, 45.3% hard hits on the season, a 20 home run total, a 203 ISO. Less capable in terms of his triple slash this year than in years past, but still doesn't really strike out very much. 17.2% strikeouts. All these guys are low strikeout options. Longoria strikes out a lot, but hits the ball very, very hard when he makes contact. 2,100 for Longo if he plays on FanDuel. That's a bargain price for a guy with 11 home runs, a 240 ISO, and 195 plate appearances with the bat that we know he's still got. I like that a lot. Carroll, wherever he hits on the lineup, he's a star caliber price, but star caliber output. Nick Ahmed, Gabe Moreno, mix and match options. Moreno's a decent catcher for only 2,600 on the DK slate, 42.1% hard hits, 280, 324, 406, and 97 WRC plus, 6 homers, 4 steals. Good enough for my money on DK. Orioles bats, Diamondbacks bats, neither pitcher. Both fairly high priorities for me. Last game of the slate. Thank God, because it's 6:20. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to skip the pitching review at the end of the show just because I got to get to building lineups at this point. If you need the pitching recap, just rewind to the very beginning of the show. We did the full thing at the beginning of the show, and not much has changed. Dodgers lineup is in. Braves lineup is not. Much as I think of Julio Urias and Max Fried as pitchers, I don't know that we need to go to them. Given how they project on this one, the best spot out of this game, oddly, is probably Julio Urias for 7,800 on the DK slate, just because it's so cheap that you can call it a value dart and you could probably throw it a few times. The Braves are just elite on the other side, though. They're drawing massive home run marks. Julio's really struggled with home runs this year, too. So, like, problem meets solution, for lack of a better word. Problem meets the exact opposite of a solution to his problem. Way too many home runs to throw at the Braves here. So that gets ugly real fast. 24.7% strikeouts, 4.8% walks for Julio is great. A 4.06 xFIP is very good. On the other side, Max Fried, he's fully priced. 9,000, 9,100, 24.1% strikeouts, 5% walks in the small sample. Very, very good at limiting power. I expect he has a limiting impact on the Dodgers' upside overall. So I'm more interested in the Braves stack than in the Dodgers stack. Excuse me. To a pretty fair degree, actually. 7.2 for Mookie in the home run model, 8.5 for Will Smith. Max Muncy down at a 6.17, sliding down the lineup a little bit, lefty-lefty. I don't love the spot for the Dodgers, but they do have some cheap bats that make it pretty easy to roster this team. Ahmed Rosario slipping into the cleanup spot for 4,000, multi-position on DK, 2,700 shortstop on FanDuel. Enough pop and a little bit of speed in there to make him a compelling enough option to help average down these prices. Chris Taylor, a little bit of power specifically when facing a lefty, but Max Fried, again, very, very good, demonstrably good over time at limiting home runs, limiting power. All right, a lot of low barrel rates. Low single-digit barrel rates, 31% hard hits, 34% hard hits, back to 31 this year. Sub 86 miles an hour of exit velo against Max. Small sample this year, but maintained it last year. So very, very good pitching options, but kind of limited on 3 or 4 sides here. I will take my shots with the Braves, though. My hope is that the matchup against Urias mistakenly gets people off the Braves because it's a killer spot. 6,900, 4,800 for Acuna off the top, 30 home runs, 62 steals. First player ever to go 30-60 in Major League history. Give him the MVP. The MVP shootout between him and Mookie last night was fantastic, by the way, for anybody who didn't see it. Just dynamite. Super fun to watch. I expect we're going to have a really fun game again tonight. Maybe a little bit more tense, low-scoring kind of action tonight. Acuna, Albies, Riley, Olsen, Ozuna, Murphy, Orlando Arcia, and Michael Harris. And what the hell, let's throw Kevin Pillar into the mix. 1 through 9, you can stack the Braves in basically any combination. Pillar's your weak link. If he plays 76 WRC plus on the season, he does have a little bit of righty pop. 3,000, 2,400. At worst, he's a righty bat that helps average down some of the costs. Michael Harris is a star. He's cheap. Orlando Arcia, 4,300, 2,800. It's just way too cheap. 2,800 for Arcia on FanDuel. Thank you. That's a bargain. 16 home runs, a 111 WRC plus for the shortstop. Murph's a star behind the plate. Ozuna's a star in the outfield. 31 home runs, a 265 ISO, 32% better than average creating runs. These guys all might be the best guys at their position, and this guy is probably one of the best 3 outfielders in the entire league. Top to bottom, the Braves. Mookie, Freddie, Will Smith, Ahmed Rosario, Chris Taylor, Max Muncy for the Dodgers. Enrique Hernandez, James Outman against the lefty is a little bit more limited, but I like Outman probably better than I like Enrique Hernandez or Miguel Rojas from the bottom of the Dodgers lineup. I just expect we get a more limiting impact from Max Fried on their lineup than we do on the Braves by Julio Urias. Braves lineup just dropped. Travis d'Arnaud in the lineup, so we know that is a downgrade from Sean Murphy, but only a minor one when it comes to d'Arnaud's ability to hit for right-handed power, and now we get a cheaper catcher in that lineup. So I still like the catcher spot from the Braves, while I do consider it a bit of a downgrade, but d'Arnaud's like my favorite backup catcher in the entire league. We also get Eddie Rosario in the lineup, lefty-lefty, instead of the Kevin Pillar spot. So bump to overall power, bump to run quality, despite the lefty-lefty for Rosario. Who cares? It's a good enough spot. You just want to roster all the Braves. So Braves bats way up here. Dodgers bats followed. And then probably Max Fried and Julio Urias. But Urias's DK value price is the best pitching point out of the 4 pitching spots. That's it, gang. We got to go. 6:23. Appreciate the hell out of you guys. Of course I have placeholders. I'll get my slate built. Don't worry. I can accelerate the process. I can cut the total number of options. All right, guys, go build your lineups. Good luck out there tonight. That was a lot of talking, 14-game breakdown. Somebody go win something. Good luck. I appreciate the hell out of you guys. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the show, if you got any value out of it. Site is rotoscouts. Follow out rotoscouts. I'll see you at the top of the standings tonight. See you tomorrow on the show.